Hello everyone and welcome back to What a Barb, a Colin podcast. We are jumping straight back into part 2 of our season 3 episode 2 rewatch. I'm so sorry we had to cut the episode in half. We really did just have so much to cover, but hopefully we didn't keep you waiting too long. Now our wonderful Veg will be joining us very soon for the rewatch, but in the meantime I am so excited to welcome back the melodious voice of our one and only Beans. Lecky's also here, but Beans is like the...
But Beans is more important.
Lecky, you're always here. Beans, welcome back to the pod.
Welcome myself. Oh my God.
Yes.
I haven't recorded it in like a month. It's been a while.
I know. I've missed editing your voice. I can tell everyone from their individual sound waves.
Yeah, I can too.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I haven't seen Beans's sound wave.
Laughter.
In a while.
Yeah. We all have a distinctive laugh, which is kind of funny if you look at the sound waves.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can tell what words you're saying by the shape of the sound waves. We spent far too much time.
Well, I'm not that bad. Oh, you know what? I do know your butts, though.
Oh, I hate my butts.
Yeah, when I've edited audio, your butts are very much the
Hate it.
I know when to cut.
Yeah.
Cut her off. Stop her talking. I do know other words in the English language above, but gorgeous and beautiful, I promise you.
They're good transition words. They're fun.
Beans, dare I ask, how are you doing?
You know, it's been a struggle. It's been...
I didn't even know whether to ask you, to be honest.
I have a lot going on in my life right now, and a lot of it's very, very stressful. You will not be hearing me later in the episode, and I might be taking a break from maybe the next episode as well, just because I have a bunch going on, so I wanted to come in and stop by and say hello, tell you all how I'm doing, but I just have some things in my personal life that I need to get situated and figured out, and it's stressing me out.
My darling Beans, we love you very, very much. And I mean, we speak to you literally every single day. But oh my God, my butt! For fuck's sake.
There we go. And edit.
However, we have missed you on the pod, my love. And it was so sad because we know that you love 302.
I think 302 is my favorite, if I remember the ranking episodes.
So as soon as though you can't be with us for the actual rewatch, we just wanted to get you on here so we could have a little catch up about it. What are your favourite moments, babe? Give us the Beans perspective on episode 2.
Well, I haven't rewatched it, so I'm just going on a feeling.
This is very in line with Beans, so this is good.
Oh my God. You know, part of me last night was like, maybe I should rewatch the episode. I'm kind of in a Bridgerton mood. And then I fell asleep.
Yeah.
The kiss is obviously my favorite. I've talked about that a lot. The way that Colin gets so flustered when she asks him to kiss her, and then the way that Penelope looks, and then when he's like still in kiss mode when she like leaves. It's so good. It's so good. I do love the market scene as well because I love their flirting.
We also saved you a question from one of our lovely Patreon members.
Amazing.
So just for you, Lecky, you can chime in a minute, but you know, just for Beans for this particular second. Tara asked, do you wish they had kept the lessons plot going for more episodes? Or do you think it was smart, well done, how they kept the lessons plot to one episode? What's the Bean take?
Oh, man. Well, we know that Bridgerton moves fairly fast, so I wasn't surprised that they didn't keep it for more than one episode. But I think it would have been fun if they still kept doing episodes on the down low, if Colin had, like, convinced her.
You mean lessons on the down low?
Yeah, lessons on the down low. What the hell did I say?
Episodes.
I didn't even hear myself. Oh, my bad. I didn't even hear myself talking.
Covert episodes, just hiding on Netflix somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, do you remember Skins when they used to have like the little YouTube episodes in between seasons or something? Yeah. That's what they could have done.
Yes.
That's what a few people have said about the little scripts that we found and like the asides and the deleted scenes or the cut moments. It's like, do you remember when we used to have actual DVDs? The DVDs were literally filled with them.
Right.
I miss DVD extras.
You know, people still push stuff out on DVDs, which I suggest, you know, in America, buy some DVDs.
Netflix, honor your origin, please.
Yeah. But I expected that they would do that. I would have loved if they kept it on for at least like one more episode. Yeah. However, with the kiss at the end of episode 2, I think it could have gone both ways. One, I'm like, how could they continue to have another episode? But two, they could have played onto that and made some really good, like, humorous moments between, like, well, we kissed each other. So
where Pen is still trying to be in that mode she's in 303, where she's like, let's pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And Colin is trying to still teach her, but utterly falling to absolute pieces while he's doing it.
Yeah. Imagine that conversation, like, in the drawing room at Bridgerton. That would have been fun.
Lucky, how do you feel about it?
So I also wanted to see more of the lessons. I adore Oblivious Colin, but we also very much love Chaos Colin. And I think it could have been interesting if either consciously or subconsciously he tried to continue the lessons in some form, or if Penn even like forced him to do it somehow. But interestingly, the original script for 303 does confirm that Colin was at least thinking of continuing the lessons in Dreamland, which we will discuss more in our next rewatch of 303. But because Beans may not be able to stick around for next episode, I thought I would share it here because I know she would love this, as will all of you, I'm assuming.
Yay.
But after Dream Pen confesses that Colin occupies her every thought, Colin says, "Our lessons, there are so many things I have yet to teach you if you would like to learn." Dream Penelope is basically overcome with emotion and replies, "Beans, if you want to say this, I thought it'd be funny," but she says,
Where's the script? Where's the script?
No, it's just 2 words. She says, "Teach me."
Teach me.
I swear it would have been a bit more romantic than that. Imagine Colin's dream and then Beans' voice just reaches.
Yeah, Penelope opens her mouth to speak and it's Beans.
Teach me.
Oh my god, suddenly veers into nightmare territory really quickly.
Yeah. So she says, "Teach me," and then they kiss passionately.
Oh.
Colin, what else did you want to teach the girl?
Yeah. There's also this beautiful moment where Colin tells Penn, "Do not worry, it is just us. It has only ever been us," which is great.
Now that ruined my life.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it in the 303 rewatch, but that floored me, and it takes a lot to bring out an emotion within.
I know. That's Dream Colin's subconscious speaking his real feelings to Penelope. And of course, Dream Penelope is also Colin speaking back at him. But he's saying, "It's only ever been us."
So sweet.
We'll talk about it next episode about how we feel about why they cut it or how the scene would have gone. But
Well, how I feel right now is that they should have kept that because are you fucking kidding me?
I think so too. It's a killer, right?
kills me.
Yeah. I know that they want to like have the line at the like climax where they're literally where they're like confessing their feelings for each other. But man, I love those tiny pretty moments, you know?
Yeah, I wish they kept it. I also think they just wanted it to be very dreamlike and maybe not have as much dialogue. But this dialogue is so good. You should have left it in.
I am sad about this. I think it's like what we said about the fuck off conversation and the exchange that the Lord Squad have with Colin.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's because in the final edit, the music is such a part of that journey, and you almost have to, it's like a choreography, right? Between the music we hear and the scene, and they have to work together. And so those little extra bits of dialogue might have just slightly slowed it down.
Yeah.
However, please, when I die, engrave that on my tombstone.
When I die, just put my head...
Please don't do that, Beans, with your run of luck that you've had recently.
Okay, I'll knock on wood. When I die, I kind of want to be cryogenically frozen. To see if I can be revived.
The GoFundMe for Beans to be cryogenically frozen will be in our links.
Beans will be cryogenically frozen, and Ovs will have a tombstone that says, "Teach me."
No, I don't want to teach me.
You didn't specify which line exactly.
Don't you dare put teach me on my tombstone.
So we're going to put teach me on there.
Teach me.
No, I want It's Just Us, It's Only Ever Been Us. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's cute.
It is good, isn't it?
Beans. Seeing as though we didn't get a chance to chat with you on the pod about all those little details, do you have any favourite little discoveries?
Oh my gosh.
Basilio and Jen. Oh, we are riding hard for that couple.
Oh, God, yeah, that might be my favorite thing.
Oh, Basilio and Jen is great. I did love that.
Sorry, Basilio. Rest in peace, your horse.
I know. Yeah, poor horsey boy. That's a fun discovery. And all the conversations with Benedict, all of those scenes that were cut from him, which is what I wanted to be included.
Yeah, you do love Ben.
It's all the things that I wanted from the season, and then knowing that they were included and then they were cut makes me so sad. Because the Benedict, the more Antony scenes.
It's interesting to know how those elements, if they'll be picked up again in season 4.
Yeah.
If like that little seed will be sort of sown.
Planted and then revisited.
Yeah, because that's the direction that you want for Ben, isn't it? It's that sort of challenges you want for him.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? There was stuff with Eloise too that was really interesting too, between her and Ben, when Ben was like,
oh yeah,
it seems like you are heartbroken over someone.
You're heartbroken.
That was interesting.
One of the reasons I liked that also is because we have these really sweet kind of private moments between Eloise and Ben when they're on the swings.
Yeah.
To see those moments in other areas of their lives when they're like out in society, that would have been nice. There was even like a cut exchange between them on the promenade after Colin disappeared. I would have liked more Eloise and Ben moments just because we know they're very close.
And they recognize each other.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, it seemed like that there were a bunch of like sort of fun family moments between Ben, Colin, and Eloise that were cut.
And Antony.
Yeah. And I would have loved to see those because we love the family dynamic.
I understand why the writers cut it because it is a little on the nose, but when Colin encourages Benedict in the script to even dance with the society lady, it's very matchmaker Colin.
Right.
And we do love matchmaker Colin, so it would have been nice to see that.
I know.
Matchmaker Colin.
But there are reasons why they cut certain things.
And I think that's what we're going to look at as we go through the rewatch, because it's part of the process, right?
Right.
I think there are even moments where there's things I would have loved to have seen, but I completely appreciate why they were taken out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how they change the story and how pacing has to be considered and things like that we maybe don't factor in as viewers, but we benefit from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could also see why they included it initially.
Yeah.
And then why they removed it.
Right. And I think a couple of things that were cut from the script can be included in future seasons. The conversation with Antony and Fran, that could come in a later season as well.
The Mondrich subplot.
Exactly. Yeah. So those are things that could easily come up again.
Yeah.
So, Lucky, you did say that you guys are going to be talking more about the scripts in the future, right?
Yep.
Okay, so if anybody wants to like read these scripts, like where can they go to maybe find them?
So as a reminder, they are at the Writers Guild Foundation Shavelson Web Library in Los Angeles. It is a public library, but these are unpublished manuscripts, so you do need to make an appointment to go see them. They don't share them online. If you are interested in other movies and TV shows, it's such a great place. Highly recommend a visit.
Are there any scripts available online that we could see?
Oh, there are a couple of Bridgerton scripts online.
There's the scripts for 101 and 201, I believe.
Amazing.
Yeah, they were submitted for, I think it was Emmy consideration.
Right.
So at some point, hopefully, we might expect 301 to appear online.
Maybe. And that's my favorite. So I would love to download that and have that forevermore.
No, what she's actually going to do, listeners, is wallpaper it
Yeah.
in her office. And then interspersed are going to be those prints that you've ordered from Bolin Fan Comic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then your husband will divorce you.
Yeah.
Oh, and whoever made a comment about how they can't wait to hear my best hits, thank you. I will get on that right away.
That was months ago. But if you're listening,
She's really needed the boost recently. She's having a tough old time. If anyone has any prayer circles or sacrifices they're willing to make Beans' life less catastrophic.
Yeah, please. If anybody has good vibes, just put Beans needs a miracle. Just, put it out to the universe.
I have a little prayer circle for you over there.
That's
and
amazing.
it's got like a little thing that's like,
Oh my
please
gosh.
let Beans have a better life. We're like pulling everything out over here. It's not been
my
easy,
God.
I'll tell you.
If y'all want to do, a little prayer, a little manifestation circle.
we'll accept it.
If you want to add to the prayer circle for Beans,
Yeah.
put the little candle emojis with the little Beans emoji.
Yeah.
on her socials because she needs it.
Please,
Yeah.
just anything, get into a prayer circle, be like, I need to pray for my favorite podcaster.
Or even least favourite podcast. We're really just taking nothing at this point.
Just some good thoughts.
Yeah, from anywhere. Yeah.
Well, we love you so much. You're going to be okay. You and Biss will be all right. We'll get you both through. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. We love you. We'll see you in like 3 seconds when we've recorded the crumbs.
Yeah.
Lecky, what is going on?
It has been a little while since our last crumb, so we have a few things to sweep up. There haven't been too many filming updates for season 4, but we do know that cast and crew are still hard at work. We know that a ball has recently been filmed, and 2 new characters are seemingly joining this season, with Pablo Disca reported as Pretty Boy and David Anthony Barr confirmed as Demimonde Man. It also sounds as if Trisha Brock will be returning to direct episodes 3 and 4 of season 4, though that's not entirely confirmed at this point.
Interesting.
Luke Thompson and Yaren Ha treated fans to a dramatic reading of An Offer from a Gentleman. I told you it had been a while since we did Crumbs, apologies, in which they read an extract of Lady Whistledown's thoughts on a certain masquerade ball. It was lovely to see them both on our screens, and hopefully more of these little promo videos will be dropped across the next few months to tide us over until season 4.
Christmas is coming up. You know we've had 1 or 2 eventful Christmases in this fandom, and some uneventful Christmases.
Some disappointing, some not.
3 cheers for season 3 bloopers.
Fingers crossed. I will never forget Christmas 2022. Let's just put it that way.
Oh my gosh.
Yaren also attended the Dune Prophecy premiere at the end of October, where she shared a tiny little season 4 crumb with TV Insider. The interviewer asked Yaren if there were any pop culture influences in season 4, to which Yaren replied, "It's funny because there is a scene, and I literally said to Luke, you're giving Mr. Darcy vibes 100%. So I guess Pride and Prejudice for me. I don't think the showrunners are thinking that, but for me, I'm thinking Pride and Prejudice."
Aw.
I mean, there's a lake scene in there somewhere.
Yep.
Ooh, a lake. But they had a lake scene already.
Yeah, but this will be like Antony fell in the lake. This will be Benedict, I'm assuming, diving into the lake like Colin Firth, but I don't know.
Or he's walking in a big billowing coat.
Yeah, and then he'll be naked.
Yeah.
So. Of course, in Pollen news, everyone has been delighted to see Penn and Colin leading a new Netflix promo campaign across the US. The campaign is celebrating a new feature called Netflix Moments, whereby users can easily save, relive, and share their favorite Netflix scenes. And what better moment could there possibly be than the good old carriage scene featuring Penn and Colin at 50 minutes and 11 seconds in season 3, episode 4.
Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding.
The beat of my heart at this point.
Knowing Pollen fans as we do, I'm pretty sure we all already have that timestamp memorized by heart, but it's been amazing to see Pollen popping up on billboards, Times Square Pollen, good to see you again, and even buses across the United States featuring the tagline, "What a ride."
Aw.
Thanks for stealing our episode 4 rewatch title, Netflix. It's on the billboards for Pollen, so we are back to the drawing boards for our podcast episode title for episode 4.
Fuck's sake. Who bloody knows what we're going to call it now?
Yeah. I really want somebody to do a fan edit of them in the carriage, but have my version of...
The Dink Dink version?
Yeah.
the Dink Dink edit.
Ding, 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 ding.
Anyway, Jonathan Bailey has been very, very busy on the worldwide promo tour for Wicked, which is due to be released within a matter of days.
I remember that being filmed. Do you remember back in the olden days?
Yep.
What is this feeling? So sudden and new.
Jonathan Bailey.
Thanksgiving.
As big musical theater fans, everyone on the pod is so excited to see Johnny as Fiyero. We just know he's going to crush it.
We just know he's gonna dance through life.
During Johnny Bailey's tour, Johnny has shared 1 or 2 Bridgerton crumbs. First of all, he revealed that Jack the Horse, best known for his performance as Antony's horse in Bridgerton, has in fact returned for the role of Fiyero's horse in Wicked. Very exciting, especially since this episode in the rewatch is quite upsetting for horse fans. It's nice to have some positive news for the equines in our lives. Jonathan also confirmed upcoming filming for Bridgerton during an as-yet unaired episode of Late Night with Seth Meyers. He confirmed he'll even be reuniting with the Bridgerton family next week.
Ooh.
He added, "It changes every year, you know, every 2 years. There's going to be lots of space for new people to come in, and Luke and Yaren are going to be great, so I always pop back and say hello." In cast news, congratulations are in order to Nicola Coughlan, who was named one of Harper Bazaar's Women of the Year. Nicola, Golda, and Martins attended the Woman of the Year awards, where Nicola was honored as Television Actress of the Year. In a very sweet moment, Golda presented the award to Nicola, and Nicola then gave a very powerful speech, which we will of course list in our show notes so you can go and listen in full. In more Nicola news, it has been announced that Nicola will be voicing a character in a new Audible original audiobook titled Misdirected. The UK fashion rental company Her also revealed Nicola as a contributor to their Choose Love Her collection, meaning you can rent or even buy pieces Nicola herself has worn, all to raise funds for Choose Love.
I gotta have that corset she wears to the Barbie premiere. I don't have anywhere to wear it right now, you know?
Do you not, Beans?
But, you know, I might wear it to the bar. bar hopping in a corset.
And lastly for Nick, a first look has been released for her upcoming project, The Faraway Tree, a film adaptation of the Enid Blyton story of the same name. The sneak peek features Nicola's character, the woodland fairy Silky, peering through leaves. It was a very beautiful shot. Luke Newton was featured in People's 2024 Sexiest Man Alive issue as part of the Royally Sexy portfolio. During the interview, Luke reflected on his time on Bridgerton, saying, "The best part about playing Colin is that we get to come back year after year and there's been space in the story. There's always a summer for our characters to grow and evolve and go through these wild experiences. And I think probably for Colin, he's had this crazy experience of traveling and finding himself, so being able to portray multiple different versions of this character is something that I've really loved. He was a teenager when we first met him, and to see him now year after year sort of step into adulthood was really fun to explore." Luke also reflected on how transformative the costumes are for getting into character. He alluded to season 4 saying, "I think I had a moment going into the new season where I was like, it's been a while now, how am I going to get back into this? But I kind of just trusted the process of knowing as soon as I put my first costume on that it would change everything. And it does every time, no matter how many sort of rehearsals or script reads that we do, it really does change when you get into those costumes." Luke also hinted that the famous Colin Sideburns will be returning for season 4, but may be fake this time around.
Rest in peace.
He also said that he is most like his character out of everyone on the show, but that he'd like to think that he is less of a pushover and slightly stronger-willed. The full interview will be linked in our show notes if you would like to check it out. It has also been announced that Luke Newton will star alongside Lucy Hale in the sci-fi thriller White Mars. Set in a remote research facility in Antarctica, it revolves around two microbiologists who must fight to protect their crew from a relentless, malevolent entity intent on wiping them out. Very interesting. Very intrigued to see this when it comes out. Back in October, Adjoa Endo joined an event organized by Congress of the South 40 at Washington University. During the talk, Adjoa reflected back on her life and career, saying, "When you see me play Lady Danbury, that's 40 years of professional acting life. That's 61 years of life. Lady Danbury is just the tip of that iceberg." Adjoa also shared an interesting little crumb from season 4 during filming of a garden party scene. She said, "If you watch it in the future, the rain was horizontal, so we're all in full gear. I've been in hair and makeup for 3 hours before we even started shooting, and we're all going, I think it's clearing up over there. No, we don't know that. We just wanted it to because we've been stuck in the rain for hours. So check out that garden party scene and look for the fake sunshine."
You know you will, Adjoa.
We've looked for dead trees in the past. I'm sure we'll be looking for more in the future.
Yep.
Adjoa is also starring in the Boots Christmas campaign, so UK listeners, keep your eyes peeled for adverts. I saw the advert for that. It's very cute.
Yeah.
Sam Phillips and Joe Barnes have also posted another hilarious sketch, this time based on Lord of the Rings. As always, you can find that at Mum, I'm in a Movie on Instagram and TikTok. Go check them out. They're always so funny and cleverly done. Bert Seymour, our Lord Fife, is appearing in the new FX show Say Nothing, all episodes streaming now.
Canon, Lord Fife, is an important distinction these days. People have sent me messages like, "How are you doing?"
People have sent you a bunch of red flags trying to alert you that you might be on the wrong ship, but yeah.
It's been difficult at Five Live HQ. That's all I'll say.
You know, there's always one man in our life that we just can't see past the red flags, you know? Can't quit him.
Lastly, on the day we are recording, it is exactly 6 months since the release of Season 3, Part 1. Good God, what a time it's been since then.
Wow.
6 months.
I feel like it's gone fast.
Yeah.
I feel like the wait was so long that everything that's happened since the show came out has been, like, absurdly quick to me.
Right. I think in general, it's just, I'm going to collectively just assume this is how we all feel.
This is an official statement by What About Podcast.
I think we're just grateful for our fans who've like kept with us throughout the podcast and everything because, you know, this has been sort of whirlwind for us these past 6 months. I'm just going to be delusional and say that we're probably going to do cool things in the future too with the podcast that we never would have come to fruition if it wasn't for these other 3 gals and then the support that we get from our listeners as well. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, I'm super grateful for our listeners and of course for all of you. Our friendship really means a lot to me. So
yeah.
And Thanksgiving is coming up, so this is the time to be grateful.
Hell yeah. Pass the cranberry sauce. We're having mashed potatoes. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there. The whole world's thinking you.
What's that a reference to?
This Brit is confused. Oh, the American's also confused.
What is it?
Bob's Burgers.
Oh, your favorite show. Okay, fair enough.
It's a song that Linda sings, and I sing it every Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Well, Lecky, thank you for the crumbs. What a feast. What a bounty.
Yeah.
Also, it's my dog's adoptiversary right at Thanksgiving, so.
Oh gosh, that's a real headline.
We got her 2 days before Thanksgiving in 2014.
Oh my gosh. Also, November 30th is when I got Biscuit.
Aw.
Yeah.
Lots to be grateful for in November.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, Beans. We wish you well on all your endeavours in life.
Oh, please. Burn those candles for me, babes.
But for now, off you go. We'll go find veg. And shall we actually finish this bloody rewatch, Leggy?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's go. We get the whole journal scene here, which is just a complete fever dream. It's so surreal to see the scene being lifted from the books and playing out so closely. I think the tone is slightly different for the better, definitely. But it's really surreal to see those lines and those moments play out. And I feel sometimes that episode 2 is sort of forgotten when we talk about season 3, which is crazy because there's so many key moments that happen. Yeah. But I think a lot of the focus goes on later episodes where Paul and are tormented, or they're so deeply in love and it's utterly romantic, and they take up a lot of space in the conversation. But for me, these are the Pollen scenes that I spent the most time imagining when I was imagining season 3. These were the scenes that I wanted to see play out.
Yeah.
And I think episode 2 is a lighter episode, but it is so deeply earnest. And I think it's the kind of Pen and Colin that I will always hold the closest to my heart, the slightly oblivious friends, really beautiful moments where they're still so in sync and then out of sync and miscommunication. Yeah. And I think the journal scene is a really beautiful part of that. And maybe I'd even say maybe the last moment that we really spend with that Pen and Colin.
They're teetering on the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like Book Penelope, show Pen has zero regard for privacy. I mean, she's Lady Whistledown after all, so we shouldn't be surprised. But she fully takes the opportunity to snoop. So she makes a beeline, rest in peace Edmund, for Colin's pirate coat. Can't blame you there, Pen.
And our listener, Jamie, says, what do you think crosses Pen's mind at 1908 to 1909? I love how specific that is. Right after she touches Colin's coat and looks at the sky. Also, I still think that Pen's going to stop and sniff his coat each time I watch this scene.
I think Pen seizes the opportunity to be close to Colin in a way that she never otherwise would be. Even at this point, she's determined to move forward with her life and marry someone else. She's still drawn to him and probably just feels compelled to be close to him in the only way that she can. And also the coat is fantastic, so why not?
And Jamie, I would not blame her one bit if she did sniff his coat. Though, to be honest, I'm not sure how good it would smell. I love the pirate coat with my heart and soul. We don't have much longer with him. I don't think he makes it past episode 3. But I don't know how good that coat will smell. It's been a lot of places. It's seen a lot of things. Just touches enough, Pen. And then, of course, Snoopy Pen catches sight of something very mysterious. It's an open journal. And you know what Book Pen thinks? If a journal's open, it's there to be read. It's fair game. Those are the rules of privacy, evidently. And she's always been such an observant and curious character. And so it's no surprise that this catches her attention. And she begins to read it and gasps as she realises it's Colin's writing. If you're so desperate to read Colin's writing, you could have, I don't know, read his letters. Perhaps a little suggestion for you there, Pen?
Well, she may have read them. She just didn't reply.
Oh, she totally read them.
Yeah, she read them.
Of course she read them. She's pissed off at him. But I think it's really funny to see that struggle. To know she's like pacing back and forth as to whether she's going to do it. It reminds me of Book Pen.
Oh, yeah.
Where she has to like
tell her feet to move.
It's a good 3 pages that she's pondering whether to look.
Yeah. Oh, I love her. She's compelled to read She is Nothing If Not a Writer. And she reads the words, I can now declare with great certainty that Paris has some of the most beautiful women in the world. How lucky I am to be surrounded by them on the tree-lined streets of Le Marais and the charming cafes along the Seine at times when the city is still, alone at night. And then Colin's voice takes over. We did always hope for a little Luke Newton voiceover at some point in season 3. So dreams come true.
Yeah.
As he says, in those moments alone, as my fingers trace freckles from cheek to collarbone, or as I watch the way starlight dances across skin, I marvel at how one can feel such intimacy, but also such great distance. And I think this is such an important moment in capturing the difficulty Colin has between physical touch and intimacy and struggling to understand why those two haven't been able to reconcile in his mind. Something that I think then when we're talking about a scene like the brothel, sort of illuminates that as well, that although he is taking part in physical intimacy, it isn't reaching him emotionally.
Yes. Just as a side note, we also often refer to this as smut. We know this isn't really smutty, but it's a little scandalous, so we refer to it as smut.
It's the smut of 1815.
Yeah.
And you know what? She fucking loved it. She got it published.
Yeah, she's a dirty girl.
She's there for it. She's on AO3.
Oh, she is 100% on AO3. She's writing the isolation Hermione fic.
On the Penelope Featherington / Colin Bridgerton tag, she is the number one. And I like that she approaches this from a writer's perspective as well. It's not something where she gets possessive or jealous that he's been with other women. She recognises his talent. And speaking of, Colin walks in, shawl in hand, utterly furious to find Pen reading his journal. It is an invasion of privacy. Pen, no matter what little loopholes you think you're going to get away with.
He did leave it wide open.
He did. Well, it's fair game. Fair game. It is straight from the book.
And that study isn't just used by him.
No?
We see him having drinks with Antony and Benedict.
Anyone could be in there.
Anybody could be there.
And it's kind of straight from the books in when he comes in and finds her with the journal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I preferred this kind of anger because in the book, he's like genuinely like quite, not physically aggressive, but he's very aggressively angry.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I think it's more of an exposed anger and it suits show Colin far more.
Yeah. They're friends. So I feel like that adds a different...
Yeah.
They seem to be closer friends than they are, obviously, in the book. So that adds a dynamic where he's maybe more comfortable chastising her for her behavior.
Yeah.
Almost like a little bit of Emma vibes and like showing that he's upset by what she's done.
And I think he has such a complicated relationship with writing, especially at this point, because I think Pen and Whistledown, he's having trouble with both of them when it comes to what's been perceived of him, what's been written about him, what he's written. And it's layered in that insecurity of trusting Pen with his words via their letters, and albeit letters of very different form to journaling, but being rebuffed by her silence and feeling so isolated and rejected by that, thinking that he wasn't good enough, thinking that she didn't need him in his life and didn't need his words. So he then comes in and finds that she's poring over this, which was written in the middle of him missing her so much.
Yeah.
And then also tied in with hating Whistledown. And in episode 2, he feels so exposed by her. So he's even more vulnerable and self-conscious about who he is and how he's been perceived.
Yeah.
Which I think builds into this complicated moment that they have. And in his little fury, he knocks over a broken candle. I think I still would have preferred the letter opener, but you know.
But what would he have done? Just grabbed one like a knife. How dare you read my... Ouch!
Good day.
If he had cut his hand on a letter opener, he could have, under his breath, been like, I bet you don't know what this is. You didn't answer.
Oh, that would have been great.
My letters.
Come on, that would have been fucking perfect. And our lovely listener Tracy said, why does Colin pick up glass like that? Dude, that's not how you pick up broken glass. Get a broom. And what I'll say to that is, the aristocracy.
Yeah, he's not used to lifting his fingers.
Yeah, literally. That's probably the first smashed glass he's ever had to be anywhere near.
Mm-hmm.
A mess that I have to tidy up instead of fleeing to Greece. Can't comprehend that. So he's bleeding. He's very tetchy. And she's like, look, just let me take care of it. I can handle this. You're floundering, babe. But I bloody wish, I said it so many times, that she'd use the cravat.
Yeah.
It's right there on his neck.
Missed opportunity.
It's so intimate.
Yeah.
But, you know, she tends to him with the bandage. I suppose it's more sterile using a bandage, fair enough. Or
God, yeah, because where's that cravat been? Fucking hell.
fair play. She should have done what she did in books, where she slipped her hand over the pocket on his heart and pulled out a handkerchief.
Mm-hmm. To increase the contact between them.
Instead, I think she just like grabs it from the side.
But yeah, this is a lovely moment as Pen tends to a wounded Colin.
So sweet.
And I am definitely not like, you know, I'm not all about the heteronormativity, but sometimes things like this, I love it. I love, like, you know, it's the love of a good woman, isn't it? We're calm, we're nurturing. It's lovely.
It's a gorgeous moment, and it's a real profound moment, this moment of physical intimacy where this is, I mean, the handshake is profound, I will say that. But this is a vulnerable Colin who is struggling with concepts of intimacy. And I think this is the first time that physical intimacy and emotional vulnerability have really, really collided for him, which I think is why it's so profound. We'll obviously return to this scene in episode 4 when Colin mentally returns to this scene. And this is the moment he's brought back to instead of the first kiss. So in some ways, although the first kiss is massively profound in terms of his realization, I'd argue that this moment in terms of physical intimacy, reconciling with emotional intimacy and emotional vulnerability is really transformative for them in their journey.
Yeah, and really demonstrates to Colin exactly how much Penelope cares for him. Because, like you said, he came back, thought that she didn't care about him anymore because she didn't read any of his letters as far as he thinks, as far as he knows. He thinks that, like everyone else, she is now bored by what he has to say, which is one of those reasons he feels insecure as a writer in the first place. And then in this scene, as she's literally tending to his hand, she shows that she cares for him in another way. She compliments his writing and shows that she's not only interested in his writing, she thinks he's a good writer and she wants him to know that he's good at it because she genuinely cares for him. And we see that him kind of like processing that and him softening in that moment in a way that's just really beautiful.
She cares for him and she sees him.
Yep.
And for Colin, being seen by her is so profound because he doesn't feel needed. And I think it's hard for him in this moment. It's vulnerable for him in this moment as well because he is relinquishing that caring, heroic role to Penelope. He's being cared for. And it ties into the struggle that he has in part 2, which is where he's so hurt and angry and he feels like he's not needed. And that Penelope is more the provider than being provided for in so many ways. And being able to be looked after and not having to take care of everything else is just really, it's really sweet for him. And I do think this is such a key moment for them. And of course, as they're holding hands, there is so much debate over who pulls whose hand. Any thoughts, guys?
Yes. So I think, like, she just moves her hand a bit. The audio description says that Colin folds her fingers over, which a lot of people have taken as the canon. And I think we mentioned this in our rewatch for episode 1, but it's just worth noting that for the audio description, that is done by a third party who it's based on their interpretation of the scene. So according to that particular person who wasn't part of the writing team for Bridgerton, that's what happened.
Yeah, I feel like unlike 301, where I'm convinced that he was looking over at Penelope, I don't think in this scene that he's deliberately trying to clasp her fingers in this moment.
Yeah, and we don't need it. It's already like a very emotionally charged moment. We don't need them to be like holding, you know.
I think I like land somewhere in the middle, and I think Pen and Colin land in the middle because I think it's a bit of both. I think she is sort of amazed at having this moment of touch with him. I mean, he's always fucking holding a hand in other seasons, but for now, this physically intimate moment where she's touching him. However, I've changed my mind on who does what. I think he slightly pulls her in, and I'll tell you for why. Because Pen is sort of in that moment, but she is still in the mindset that they're just friends. And I think he slightly, unknowingly, pulls her in a little bit. So I think it's a bit of both.
So I rewatched this scene a couple times, and I feel like Penelope gets lost in the hand touch here. And I think that Colin does, but because he's oblivious, he's not realizing that is what is happening.
Yeah.
He doesn't realize that the physical touch between them is affecting him. So when you see him look down, he moves to fiddle with the bandage. And I feel like he's almost kind of like mentally distracting himself from this moment of physical touch by trying to like fiddle with his bandage and kind of focus on what has happened to him.
It's like, Pen, this is really nice, but also you're absolutely shit at tying bandages.
Oh.
Yeah, I've seen better bandage tying on the battlefield
The Napoleonic Wars.
and I would know.
Then I passed by and got a postcard for him.
Well, she's part of the bourgeoisie as well.
Yeah.
I agree. I think this is a moment of, in the moment, he doesn't realise, and he looks back on it later and realises that it was a part of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key part. But it is still a very vulnerable moment for him. And I think he feels exposed. And so naturally, he breaks that moment by pulling himself away from it. And earlier I said that the episode explores the true friendship between the two, but also shows how they're heading on slightly two different paths with how they're handling it, with Pen trying to move forward, even when she slips and falters at point. And Colin is slipping towards that moment of realisation. But I love the journal scene because there are these moments in the episode, no matter where they're at on that journey, they're suddenly caught in an undeniable moment of the two of them being drawn together that only breaks when Penelope touches on Colin's vulnerability as a writer, as you say, Lecky. And it's at that point that he pauses lessons for the day, but safe in the promise that they'll see each other later that night. I much prefer the way this scene ends than it does in the book, where in the book it ends out of anger. She storms out. They're always storming out of rooms in the book.
Yeah, slamming doors. Yeah.
They're like Selena in Gossip Girl. I have to go.
And they have to then like make it up again at the Smith Smythe musical. Rest in peace, rest in imagination.
Oh yeah.
But that's just not show Colin, and it's not show Polin, and he doesn't dismiss her that harshly. And they have a lovely time at Otterley until it all goes to shit.
I I like that he's the one who asks if he will see her that night because he feels kind of apologetic about this outburst that he had and he cares about her and he didn't want to hurt her feelings. And so he's kind of reassuring her a little bit.
He's like, are you going to the full moon ball? Because I might be going to the full moon ball and it'd be cool if you were going to the full moon ball so I could see you at the full moon. And she's like, yes.
Yes.
It's all good, babe. She's off.
One interesting tidbit here, in the original scene, Penelope lies and tells Colin that she read about his travels in Spain, which makes him feel less embarrassed as she's wrapping his hand in the moment. He realizes the truth, however, when he goes over to his desk and glances at his journal, seeing exactly what Penelope read about his time in Paris. And apparently he finds this a bit arousing, just like Pen found his journals.
That's so funny. I love that on the floor. She's like, you were just talking about paella? And and there was something about just a beach. You were completely alone. There was no one around for miles. And he's like, thank fuck. And then he wanders over. It's like, it was fucking girls in Paris. And it makes sense because there's that really lingering glance that he gives as she leaves the room. But I think it's hilarious that he's also kind of like, she was reading my smut.
There's actually a really funny callback to this originally in 305 after the mirror scene when Penelope brings up the girls in Paris and asks how she compares. He's like, I knew you read my journal about Paris. Yeah, basically.
You liar. You know how much I hate lying, Pen. She's like, that's the only lie, I swear.
Yeah.
Target locked.
Later that night, we find Colin in yet another carriage, this time with Elle, because he is heading to Osterley because if Pen's there, he has to be too.
Just as an aside, we will probably keep calling this Osterley. We know it's the full moon ball. We're just used to calling it Osterley.
The crumbs live long in our memory.
Yep.
And this is filmed at Osterley Park, which is in like West London kind of outskirts. And I recently did a park run there. So if you're a UK-based runner, it's definitely worth a trip. There's cows on the course.
Very sweet. But how's Colin and Elle doing, Lecky?
So I love that Colin glances at his hand in this scene, presumably thinking about his earlier interaction with Penelope. And Penelope is still very much on Eloise's mind, too, as Colin asks what's troubling Elle. And Elle reveals she was upset by Pen being at the house. Yes, she's hurt and angry, but she's still full of so much love for Pen. Love she doesn't know what to do with, but doesn't try to rid herself of. So she tells Colin that she does not wish for him to cast her out. Colin might be all that Penelope has now. She also asks how Penelope is because she wants to make sure she's not suffering or despondent.
Yeah, we said before, but we really love this nuanced portrayal of Eloise's feelings about Pen. I think it's so truthful to see how you feel when a friendship like that has fractured. And I think it's also interesting because they're talking about Penelope and later on, Eloise will be so blindsided by Pen and Colin getting together. So everyone's always wondered, how much does Eloise know? Does she suspect? And I think she still really sees, having grown up with the two of them, she really sees Colin as Penelope's friend. She says, you're all she has. And they talk about trying to find Penelope a husband here. And this is the first time that Eloise learns about their plan and she's taken aback, saying that's so unlike her. I mean, is it Eloise or have you just never really listened to her?
Yeah.
That's the question. And Colin says perhaps she has changed, but we know Penelope hasn't changed. This is just who she's always been. And then Eloise says she's not seeking a husband in you, I hope. Utterly perplexed by the very notion, God forbid. And Colin is also shocked. He's like, not that I'm aware of, because God forbid pre-kiss Colin be aware of anything.
I'm only helping her find one.
I'm helping her find one. No trouble at all. And then he's like, she ain't got any family. She ain't got any male siblings. She doesn't have a husband. She doesn't have a brother. That old chestnut again.
How dare you take advantage of these poor ladies, Featherington, without a father or a husband to protect them?
Hero Colin is on hand, but he says we're not telling anyone because obviously those strolls down Rotten Row, the strolls in the marketplace have been top secret, hidden to all. Well done, Colin.
Bribing half the staff in Mayfair to keep quiet.
And I think it's interesting because this is the first time that Colin is really confronted by the suggestion that he could be the eligible husband. He's been so lost in the plan. He needs to be slapped in the face. We see this with Colin. It's such a gradual relationship that he's had with Penelope that he needs these big moments to hit him. And I think although he dismisses it here as like, obviously I'm not the eligible husband for her, I think it plants a seed right in his mind just before he heads into Osterley. No plant pun intended, even if the planting does come from one half of Eloise. So there we go. He's got Pen on the mind. We're heading to Osterley. Here we
So we very much remember this from our Crumbs days and our Crumbs episodes. If you haven't listened to them, memorably, we got a shot of what appeared to be blurry Luke, and his sideburns gave him away that Colin might have been present at this ball. And it was also filmed during a heat wave. And then I think also the season 3 announcement video was filmed there.
This is one of the first Crumbs as well.
Yeah, these are so nostalgic for us because these were some of the very first filming leaks that we ever saw all the way back in summer 2022, which was such a fun, special time in the fandom, I think. It was really sweet, really exciting. So these have lived in our hearts for very long. So actually seeing them fully set up, this gorgeous set decor over at Osterley is just so, so lovely. And then it ends up being this huge set piece where so much goes down. But first of all, how is our lovely Osterley Colin looking, Veg?
Wow, Osterley Colin is looking rather astonishing in what I think we all agree is one of his best looks. He's fittingly wearing a deep midnight blue, double-breasted coat, complete with the one and only carriage waistcoat. Yes, Enchanting Colin is already present correct and down bad, crying at the gym in episode 2. And I have to say, the curls are absolutely curling at Osterley. This is properly like the support curls. I think they're starting their career. You know, they've been to uni and they've done their masters in support. I don't know where that analogy was going.
They've graduated.
Yeah, they're ready. So congrats to the emotional support clip for putting an absolutely amazing shift on this day. And we know Osterley was filmed during a heat wave, so these were definitely challenging conditions for this clip, but it never let us down, and it certainly does not let Colin's curls fall down in this scene. But of course, the real star of the show is Colin's white bandage. Fans, you might remember that we first saw Osterley, Pen and Colin on Christmas Day 2023. I remember it well. I'd just finished my shift in charge of Parkrun. I pulled up at my house in the car and just screamed.
I was in Crete. Lecky was in like, it was 3 a.m. or something where you were.
I was at my mom's on the couch trying to be quiet and freaking out.
I actually think I might cry. They look so beautiful.
I'm shitting myself. I'm throwing up. I'm standing up in the dark.
You look so beautiful.
I could literally take a shit on the floor. I'm freaking out.
So we had very, very quiet screams from Lecky. And I was like, it's a fucking bandage.
I'm literally shaking. Colin's hand is injured.
Colin has a bandage.
His
on his fucking hand.
The bandage. Look at his hand. Look at his hand. Look at his hand. I'm literally crying.
I'm literally losing my mind. I'm shitting right here, right now.
That was the picture, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it still is.
It was the bandage that stole the show, and it was our first confirmation of writer Colin. It's the accessory of 1815. It's the equivalent of Regina George showing her bra through her top in Mean Girls. It's amazing. And he's even taken the time to coordinate the look with a matching snowy white cravat. Gorgeous. One of my all-time favourites, have to say.
He looks like a Disney prince at Osterley.
It's the Disney prince. Yeah. And what is our Disney prince up to, Lek?
Well, Colin must be prepping for a rough night ahead because we find him downing a preemptive glass of emotional support lemonade alongside Benedict. Unfortunately for the brothers, they are suddenly swarmed by a pack of young ladies. Among them is Miss Goring, a previous closet buddy of our dear Lord Fife. From some behind-the-scenes shots shared by Esme Coy, who plays Miss Goring, we now know that Colin and Miss Goring actually interacted in this scene initially. And in the original script for 302, Miss Goring questions Colin about his injured hand, to which he adorably says, "This is nothing, you should see the other gentleman." And then after a beat, he adds, "Strangely, not a scratch on him." Basically, he was just being super charming, which totally fits the Disney princess aesthetic we see from Colin at Osterley.
You know what? I do wish this moment had made it to the show because it's that fun nod to the book where Whistledown reports on Colin gets really annoyed when all the young women are fawning over him. And he's like, this fucking bandage, I wish I'd left it at home.
Yeah.
And I think it would have fit here because it's not just because he doesn't want the attention, but it's because he can't really explain how he got the injury. And if he thinks too much about how he got the injury, then all those strange tingly feelings start to bubble up about that moment.
Yeah.
He's had a big day with Pen. She's come around to his house. They've had this really transformative moment that he isn't able to yet process, but deep down his subconscious knows something is shifting for him. And then Eloise has just planted that idea about, could you be her husband? And his brain is going, do, 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 do. Please clue into what you're doing here. You're trying to find your future wife a different husband, you moron. I love you, Colin, no offense. And then I think this would have been great if he'd rejected Goring, because in episode 1 he was flirting away, having the time of his life.
Exactly.
And here something's changed fundamentally. Something
has changed within him. Something is not the same. Jonathan Bailey.
And like we say, episode 2 is a gradual slipping before he smacks into the ocean. He's falling more and more into Pen, and he subconsciously doesn't want to dance with anyone else. And I think that would have been a really stark and revealing contrast to how flirty he was in episode 1 with all the ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I wonder if maybe having the brothel inserted in inserts himself where?
Yeah, they used the brothel instead, but this would have had more meaning for me, I think.
Yeah, I think having the brothel scene in this episode then would have sort of contradicted that, because we'd seen Colin with other women.
Still being rakish, yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that's quite funny from like the tiny blurs that you can see of this cutscene is that it looks like this really ghostly Penelope is in the window. Have you seen it? It's just like a little haunting of Hill House, a haunting of Otterley of a 5'1" redhead. Oh. And I like to think that had this scene been in, it would have been Pen watching Colin. She thought he was flirting with Goring, and she's like, just another day of Colin not being my future husband, I guess. What can you do? But I think it would tie into how bittersweet Otterley can be, where they're having these really sweet moments as friends, and they both kind of are wistful. She has these moments of looking at him and being sad that he isn't going to be the person she ends up with, even though she loves him so much. And he ends up being, getting Nick Jonas on the phone, having a little rendition of Jealous playing.
Colin then goes on to encourage Benedict to dance in the scene. In the original scripts for 301 and 302, this is a continuation of what we've seen of many of Benedict's siblings. Antony, Colin, and Eloise all encourage him to take a more active part in society, with Colin specifically urging Benedict earlier this episode during the promenade to try dancing with the young lady, which he again prompts Benedict to do here with Miss Stowell. Interestingly, after this point, there is another little cutscene where we see Pen watching with jealousy as Miss Goring and Miss Kenworthy fawn over Colin's injured hand, and the script hilariously points out that Pen thinks of Colin's hand as her hand. So it says, a part of her feels like that is her hand.
I do think, as fun as it would have been to see that Pen in the background becoming really adorably jealous over her hand, I almost think it's more important for us to see Colin's perspective and his confused jealousy, contrasting against Penelope's sad acceptance that she's finding someone that isn't him.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I feel like it's more important to show that Penelope's moved on and Colin is the one who's realizing that's a problem for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we need them to get into the mindset that we're going to find them in that first kiss scene. And we talked a lot in this rewatch about how heavily episode 2 adapts the book Romancing Mister Bridgerton. And book fans, you know, it was actually the Smythe-Smith musicale that followed the journal scene. And it's kind of tense because Penelope walked out after their conversation. Colin's left completely bamboozled, but knowing that he needs to apologise to her, even if he's not really entirely sure what he's apologising for. So in the book, he really reluctantly drags his sorry self to the dreaded Smythe-Smith musicale because that's where Pen's going to be, and that's where he has to be. And I do think it's sad that we never saw the musical, especially since they set it up in Queen Charlotte.
Yeah.
By having the Smythe-Smiths there.
Like a hilariously bad strings quartet. Come on.
Maybe future season, guys.
Maybe.
But I think the pollen beats from that musical make it to Osterley, because he heads into that with so many thoughts swirling about his head. In the book, he thinks that the world seemed to be shifting and he'd only been back for a short time, but Penelope had changed, or maybe he changed, or maybe she hadn't changed, but the way he saw her had changed. And really think that beautifully captures the shift in episode 2, where, as we say, Colin is slipping faster than he's able to process until it does finally hit him. So it's definitely one of my favourite balls, even if it goes south. And you know what? Speaking of disasters about to happen, where's Pen?
Well, elsewhere at the ball, we find Penelope walking into what's known as the lawn gallery. As she walks in, you can actually see poor Lord Basilio standing by the wall, looking completely distraught, holding tightly to a tear-stained handkerchief. Brilliant setup for the pollen scene to come. Absolutely tragic for horse lovers everywhere. And she looks around for a moment before joining Finch and Dankworth, but if you watch closely, you can see Finch spots her before she spots him, and he adorably gazes at Penelope with what looks like an approving smile. As for Dankworth, he appears to be looking for his missing bonbon.
Oh, so agreeable.
James Foon. He said that was one of his audition scenes, right?
His audition scene.
Yeah.
Before he even knew what the show was.
And Dankworth may have lost his wife in the celestial display, but Penelope is the celestial display here. This is again the look that we first glimpsed on Christmas 2023, and we did a big analysis, but we'll hint to it now. We were left completely starry-eyed by Penelope's gorgeous bluey green dress, which is patterned and sequined with constellations, which is very on theme. And it has a beautiful shimmer to the fabric as she catches in the low light of the ball. It's literally a gorgeous look, honestly. I'm obsessed with it. I have been since Christmas.
And it's kind of overlooked. I know she has some great ones, but this is good.
She's stunning.
Yeah. And she's completing her astral display with a star necklace and her trademark blank dance card.
Pen.
Still no names for you yet, Pen. It's heartbreaking.
Just never ends, does it? The first bloody name on her card is going to be Debling.
Yeah.
And that is the world we're all having to live in. Colin, what have you done, babe?
God. But fun fact for you, Pen's headpiece here is made of 15 individual pieces with organza, sequins, tulle, crystals, mirrored ribbon.
Ain't that the story of Penelope Featherington?
That's cute. And little brooches as well. And Nicola's makeup artist Jessie said of this look, I wanted the makeup to be a little bit cosmic, so I chose to do a smoky eye with a shiny metallic to it. And her hairstylist Farida said that she'd been inspired by a hairstyle that her friend wore at her wedding, which I think is so beautiful. And like, imagine being that friend knowing that your wedding hair is literally in Bridgerton.
Yeah.
Portia then approaches, none too subtly suggesting Dankworth and Finch look for their missing ladies. When Finch remarks that he sent Philippa for pastries, Portia chastises him by reminding him that his wife is a pastry to be savoured. This reminds me of 303 during the balloon scene when Penelope buys a pastry before Colin buys the same one, trying to savour the taste as a way to taste her. And talking of gentlemen searching for their missing ladies, we spot Colin searching the ball for a certain someone, standing in front of a carriage-shaped mirror, no less, before his eyes finally land on Pen, and he immediately breaks into a smile at the sight of her. He is so gone, and he hasn't even kissed her yet.
Oh, I love everything that's coming in the sequence is just... Oh, I mean, this is Pen and Colin finding each other across a ballroom, and it harkens back to so many moments littered throughout the seasons. Season 1, Season 2, I mean, Assuredly, Fervently, Loudly, that pivotal scene.
Yeah, Beans' favourite.
Beans.
Yeah.
We wish you were here with us.
Yeah.
But I think it also really speaks to the truth of what Colin says in 301, where he says, I seek you out at every social assembly because I know you will lift my spirits and make me see the world in ways I could not have imagined. And he's literally there searching for her.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautifully played with Pen smiling before she sort of catches her breath and the smile drops a little. And then you have Colin, whose smile is lifting into this sincere little half smirk as he finds her.
Yeah.
And then in true Colin style, she immediately ditches her brothers and heads on straight on over.
Is this or is this not one of the best Colin sequences of all time? We have oblivious Colin sending Penelope to flirt with someone else. Penelope puts her hoof in it by reminding Lord Basilio of his recently deceased horse, and Colin trots out a hilariously nerdy horse pun that leaves them both giggling together. Perfection. I also have to acknowledge how much Colin looks like a Disney prince here. As we've said, seeing him alongside Penelope also shows how beautifully his enchanted waistcoat matches her dress, with the two accidentally coordinating, looking like they belong right beside one another.
As they fucking do. And Lecky, I could not agree more. I think this is the stuff that our pollen dreams are made of, as she approaches him with such a sweet good evening, and she asks about his hand, well, her hand, as we now know.
Right, yeah.
And then Colin has this moment where he's like, oh, it's much better thanks to you, and he touches his thumb across the bandage, and it's like that little touch that he does in 304, where he's recalling back to her. So it's so deeply connected, that moment in his mind. I know we talk a lot about, I mean, we'll talk about a lot about the kiss, but that hand cut scene has such a prominent place in how he perceives Pen and how his world is shifting. And then you have this adorable moment where Pen is apologising for reading Colin's writing, but she's also sincerely expressing her admiration, and he nervously shifts around, not really knowing how to handle her praise and whether she really means it, and he feels really vulnerable at the thought of Pen getting a hold of his AO3 self-insert fic. We've all been there, Colin. And we all know by now that Pen's all for a little bit of Bridgerton smut. And here she really gently remarks that she'd like to read more one day if he'd let her. And it's so sweet because he quietly scoffs and looks away as if like, you don't really mean that. But she's so steady and genuine in her compliments that he is a good writer, and I think he makes him able to believe it a little bit more. And so, as thanks, he strikes up a little bit of a deal.
Yes, Colin says he'll consider letting her read more of his writing if she speaks to at least one lord tonight. As an untitled thirdborn, he definitely does not count, so we best trot along and find someone who does. Got anyone in mind, Ops?
Well, it's off to the races, Lek. as Colin very helpfully suggests a rather despondent Lord Basilio. Pen protests that he's a Viscount, and then Colin, I love this bit, he immediately counters that you are Penelope Featherington, do not forget that. Yeah. And Nick plays that tiny moment so beautifully as you can see her pen smile and be sort of lifted and emboldened by his words. And it's such a book pen moment of Penelope feeling more confident because of Colin and in Colin's presence. And then, look, we've got to get the condolence book out anyway for the next scene. So let me just preemptively write a sympathy note to Colin's subconscious, which is presumably buried somewhere deep inside, rising to the surface, absolutely screaming in despair as Colin gestures playfully but like a little bit begrudgingly over to Basilio and says, he's all yours. Careful what you wish for there, Colin. And good luck, Pen. Her attempts at flirting might not have gone too well on the promenade, but it's time to get back in the saddle for round 2. How does she do, Leck?
Well, congratulations, Colin. It looks like your lessons are starting to work their magic as Pen approaches Lord Basilio, ready to flirt her way into a viscountcy. Nicola is so funny here, the way she kind of adorably overacts and she's trying to play aloof and brush her hair away as she's trying to catch his attention. And Colin is all for it and smiles in approval. Feeling a little romanced, are we? Ooh. But sadly, any hopes of tiring Viscountess duties are lost as Pen remarks that life is too short, causing Basilio to begin to cry, saying he went quite quickly and then excusing himself from the conversation in tears.
Colin hurries on over to find out why things took such a bleak turn, only to be told by Pen that Basilio's horse recently died. Oh. And apparently, this is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, isn't it mean?
I mean, nothing quite like showing compassion for someone's loss, eh, Colin? I know not every family is as morbid as the Bridgertons. They whack out the bee any bloody opportunity. Never forget.
Right, yeah.
The harmony ball when they had that massive beat on the floor and they're all dancing all on it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they just, fortunately, these two are a match made in heaven because I both think it's absolutely hilarious that a man's beloved horse has died. And Pen also adores Colin's dad's sense of humour as he jokes, we shall gallop along. She's fucking loving it. Yet another horse sacrificing itself to the Pollen love story, I see. But as the two of them happily laugh over the demise of beloved pets, who pops out but one Miss Eloise Bridgerton, who is keeping a close eye on a brother and ex-best friend. I love moments like this with Claudia. She just sort of leans into the frame.
Yeah. Before we move on from this brilliant pollen scene, truly one of our favorites this season, I just want to say, don't feel too bad for Basilio because A, some believe his horse returns from the dead in 307 to haunt pollen, and B, the 307 script also implies that Basilio won't be lonely for long because at some point during the season, he settles himself to Genevieve, starting a relationship with the modiste.
Oh. But yeah, I just love this pollen moment, and it captures their friendship and their shared sense of morbid humour really well, and their geekiness because he is a nerd with silly dad jokes. And I also think it has such a sense of innocence too. I think Osterley as a whole is like that last moment of true innocence between the two of them before the world collapses in on Pen and before Colin gets hit in the face by realisation. But then these moments of little laughter are so integral to especially their friendship in season 3, where they laugh at the church, they laugh in the carriage, the mirror scene. It's that bond of two friends who truly, truly love spending time with one another. Gorgeous.
And people call this What a Barb for season 3, right?
Barb 2.0.
Like, what would we rename ourselves if we were going off this scene? Gallop Along? A Pollen podcast?
Gallop Along? We can't. Oh, I'd go as He Went Quite Quickly.
Nice. A Pollen podcast.
Doesn't bode well for the mirror scene, that, does it?
He falls in love fast. He does other things fast. No, actually, sorry. I'll interject and defend Colin here because in the script, it says that they artfully cut to make sure that you know that it is no quickie. Just FYI.
In the mirror scene?
Oh.
It says that, yeah.
Okay. It's a montage. It's a lot of time compressed into a short.
Exactly, yeah.
Fair play, Colin. I'll allow it.
Not with Pen and her eye contact.
I know. We'd all be gone. Anyway.
Tragically, this is where our lovely evening at Austerley is going to take a turn as Cressida catches Elspine on Pollen unhappily and offers some sage advice, sharing one of the best lines of dialogue this season. Yep, when Cressida has a disagreement with an acquaintance, she finds the best course of action is simply to pretend they are dead. Elle, of course, explains this is impossible as a pen appears to be haunting her house like a ghost, and perhaps too loudly shares Colin's scandalous plan to help Pen find a husband this season. In the background, Miss Livingston smiles as she registers this bit of gossip, setting the wheels in motion for the nightmare about to unfold for our poor Penelope.
Great. Thanks, Alec. Can't fucking wait. Can we delay the inevitable by buying ourselves time, checking in on the other Bridgertons. Surely Ben's around here somewhere.
Yes, so after his dance with Miss Stowell concludes, Benedict greets Will and Alice, and he gives the former a lecture about how much freedom married couples are given in society. I find this interesting because at the end of the season, Benedict basically tells Lady Tilly that he wants to remain free of attachments, but we see hints earlier in the season that perhaps he'll find it more freeing to finally open himself up to love, specifically his true love, Sophie.
He's coming for you, girl. Take him a fucking long time, but you'll get there.
And as Fran has a rather uncomfortable conversation with a musically inclined suitor who wants to know exactly how passionate Beethoven makes her feel, clearly he went to the Lord Fife School of Flirting. We find...
Like, you can't just cast in... Don't think I'm going to allow you to just throw in insults, because I'll throw insults against the people you care about, and you won't like it. Continue.
We find Philippa and Prudence orbiting a nearly empty plate of biscuits.
Colin's been around.
Claiming it for herself, cavewoman style. Prudence snatches the last biscuit out of her sister's hand and sniffs it, presumably to stake her claim, a trick she learned from Philippa, who famously also sniffed a biscuit all the way back in episode 201. Clearly a family trait.
An iconic moment. And then doesn't she put it back down again?
Yep.
It's like, go, eat the biscuit.
She'll come back for it.
It's not allowed.
Colin will hoover it up, he doesn't mind. Yeah. And all of this leads into her fan favourite moment as Portia pulls her eldest daughters into a room for a little bit of a talk about the birds and the butterflies. It is a full moon after all. Got to make the most of it. And Prue confesses she doesn't enjoy sleeping with her husband, leading to Portia sharing that a woman's pleasure is somewhat more subtle than a man's. You know what? At least it's not as disastrously bad as Violet was in season 1.
True.
But as Portia is about to explain the nuances of sex, Philippa incredibly declares,
Insert himself? Insert himself where? Amazing. What a line. And we find out that Philippa hasn't quite got the hang of things with her new husband.
they've been married fucking years at this point, mate.
Yeah. Like, what was the theory that the actor said?
So Harriet Keynes said that Lorne MacDonald, legend that he is, had a theory that Finch knew exactly what he was doing, but he was waiting for explicit consent to come from Philippa. Oh. I mean, a Regency hero.
Sweet, but misguided.
Adorable.
Yeah.
So cute.
Much to Portia's dismay.
Yeah. So she turns in despair and has a word directly with the heavens, saying, "Why must I be punished over and over?"
Don't lose hope entirely, Portia. Your older daughters might not have got to grips with the ins and outs of things, but you can spy a bigger version of the Psyche revived by Cupid's kiss sculpture in the background, perhaps signaling that Portia's youngest daughter won't have trouble figuring out the insertion issue.
Meanwhile, it seems a new suitor has inserted himself into the equation. Enter Lord Remington.
Absolutely love the music choice here, but wish they'd expanded this sequence, perhaps including the bit from the script we discussed earlier where Penn jealously watches Colin interact with Miss Kenworthy and Miss Goring shortly before she gets swept up in a conversation with fellow gossip lover Lord Remington. The jealous song does fit so well here, conveying exactly what Colin is thinking when he spies Penn hitting it off with Remington, because unlike her other encounters with Wilding and Basilio, Penn is just being herself here, and Colin is forced to come to terms with the idea that other men may also be attracted to the qualities that he enjoys in Penn.
I do think it's hilarious that Penn has one successful conversation with a suitor before Colin loses his mind to the extent that we have to get jealous to kick into the scene. Bear in mind, this girl look what Penn has dealt with over the past few years of loving Colin.
Yeah.
She has been through it. He literally cannot. We're in episode 2. It's over for him. And you can also see, as you say, Lecky, that Lord Remington is exactly the type of person that Penn could really connect with. And it's clear that Colin doesn't like it, but just can't process why he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Because he comes into this with such genuine intentions to help her. And I love the moment that she looks over at him and he raises his glass of lemonade to encourage her on. But inside you can see he's completely glitching and he just can't figure out why. Excellent. And he's clutching on to his emotional support lemonade for dear life. And I just think this whole episode has such a great way of showing that journey for Colin. And you have to give a shout out to Luke Newton for this, because the scenes within the episode were filmed completely out of order. So the ability to trace that journey as he falls and falls and falls is pretty artfully done. And of course, an important part of the Remington and Penn conversation is that it turns out that Remington loves Whistledown and he hangs on her every word. And at first, Penn tries to pretend that she doesn't like gossip, pretend that she's above gossip. But when Remington expresses his admiration for Whistledown, she really lights up. And you can see how much it means to her to have someone who loves her work and her alter ego. And that's kind of gutting when you realise how much that means to her versus how Colin will react.
Yeah.
How he will struggle with who she is. But of course, we know that he promises to come and see Pen the next morning, and she is so thrilled. But then we know that he doesn't follow through. Did he go? Was he put off by gossip? What do we think?
Yeah, maybe it was just a case of someone close to him told him, stay away from that drama.
I don't think he did. I think that although he enjoys gossip, like many of the other characters this season, he is extremely conscious of his place in society and doesn't want to be part of the gossip. So although I think he enjoyed his conversation with Pen, I don't think he did honor his promise to call on her, which is so sad.
Lord Remington, why did you do this to us? We're rooting for you. Well, we're not rooting for you. Sorry, Colin. Forgot you there. Whoops. Pull-in podcast and all. And then, of course, something that fans have wish we'd seen is Lord Remington's reaction to finding out that Pen was whistled down. What do you think his reaction was? Do you think he was at that ball in 308? Do you reckon he just became like the biggest fangirl? What do you think?
Yeah, I think he would have found it quite amusing and positive. Maybe it would have made sense. I have sort of sometimes wondered like who knew, who didn't know, but I think he definitely didn't, but he would have accepted it pretty quickly.
He'd been all for it.
Yeah, I wish we had a shot of him like gazing at her with pride and approval.
You missed your shot, babe.
Yeah, like titillated by the news, you know?
Just like a reaction shot.
Yeah.
Rushing over for her autograph.
Zach Ford Williams, of course, plays Lord Remington in the show. He appeared on the Wheelchair Activist podcast to share his experience of being on the show and the importance of representing disability on screen, particularly in a period drama like Bridgerton. Fans may know that Lord Remington's wheelchair, or bath chair as it was known in the show, is actually not a replica but was from the period. Zach said, "I was slightly cautious of it because it was this beautiful old thing and it was amazing and I didn't want to break it. It was like my baby for that period of time." He also spoke of how much joy he found in portraying Remington because he's such a fun, gossipy character. And I agree, his character really brings a fresh energy in this scene. It's interesting to contrast him with Debling, who has a more serious, quiet presence. Lord Remington allows Pen to share her playful, gossipy side, which is endearing for us and absolutely catastrophic for Colin.
Did you mention things going absolutely catastrophic, like? Well, strap yourself in, because this is when everything goes to absolute shit. Because as Penelope excitedly tells Colin that Remington is going to call on her tomorrow, wouldn't pin all your hopes on that one there, Pen. Colin is thrilled to learn that she thoroughly enjoyed talking with him. Aww. And poor Colin, he looks so quietly devastated as he replies, "I'm certain he did as well." Because, of course, a man would enjoy spending time with his Pen. And this awful moment sets in where you have this happy, hopeful little Pen smiling away, blissfully unaware that A, Colin's world is caving in on itself, and B, her world is also about to cave in on itself. Because who is that behind her but Miss Malhotra and Miss Livingston gossiping and laughing away that Colin has been helping Pen find a husband. And if there's one thing that Pen knows, it's that gossip spreads fast. But here she finds herself on the sharp, humiliating receiving end of it. And Pen and Colin glance around in growing horror as the whispers of Colin's overly kind and pitiable help spread through the crowds, as Miss Livingston delights in saying, "Pen is done for."
Colin confronts the ladies and asks what they're whispering about. As the ladies deem Penelope so beyond hope of success, the evening collapses around Penelope and we hear her heartbeat audibly pounding. This is the exact gossip Whistledown has traded in. This is the effect Penelope's writing creates. And Penelope has suffered at her own hand before, but this, when she's hoping for a future and trying to be at peace with the future she thinks she won't have with Colin, is particularly brutal. She flees the ball as everyone watches after her, and Miss Stowell's remarks that she can't wait to see what Whistledown will write. Sweet Colin follows after her, which, to be fair, probably isn't going to do anything to lessen the talk of the two of them. Somehow no one thinks it's odd that he calls after her using not just her first name, but her nickname, no less.
And all episode, the two of them have been dancing far too close to discovery, and now they have been discovered. But Penelope's ruin isn't necessarily what you'd think. It isn't because people are scandalised by thinking she's with Colin or they've been meeting up in secret and there's this illicit affair going on. It's because they find it so pitiable that she had to enlist him for help. It's almost even more mortifying that that is what they assume instead of thinking there's something actually romantic going on.
Yeah.
And as she leaves, Elle catches sight and tries to follow after Pen before Colin confronts her on the stairs. And I love the distress in Colin's voice. I think it's very similar to 301 when he leaves the Four Seasons ball because he's far more concerned with how Pen is doing rather than what those around him think. probably not helping the situation overall. And like, do you remember when we watched the scene together for the first time?
Yeah.
Because we knew Osterley was going to be this great moment, but the whole episode we were like, oh, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then it was so much more brutal than we thought. It's just absolutely awful.
It's like a horror movie.
Yeah, it really took me by surprise as well. I just didn't expect this level at all, because we'd commented before about why they're kind of pretending that this is a secret when they've been walking around before. So it was, I think it took everyone by surprise in an awful, awful way.
It was good to see an actual payoff from that build-up.
In the original script for this episode, like that precursor for the market scene that I mentioned earlier, there's also a bit where Colin like points out that it could be scandalous if they're seen together. And so he kind of wants to take precautions that they aren't seen together. And I think that was probably setting up this moment here where they were exposed. Their connection was exposed at Osterley.
I think it's interesting that he doesn't say that, and that I think Penelope in the market scene now does as she's leaving, because I think it's important that Pen is more aware of the perceptions than Colin is.
Yeah, because he's never been aware.
Yeah, he walks into these situations, and even as he's leaving, he's still shouting after her. And you know what? He does it in 304. He chases after the carriage without thinking about the consequences. The minute he does think about consequence will be, you know, an interesting day indeed. Maybe season 4. We can see. But Colin's suspicions about how the gossip got out are confirmed when a very upset Eloise confesses that she did tell Cressida, but she didn't expect the rumour to get out. And Colin can't understand what Pen could have possibly done to Elle to deserve any of what's happened to her. And you know what? To Eloise's credit, she doesn't break and tell Colin exactly what's happened, because if I was getting accusations thrown left, right and centre at me, I'd be like, look, mate, you want to know what she did?
Yeah.
But we've said that she has this far more compassionate, restrained approach to her relationship with Penelope. And one of our listeners, Victoria, said, what was Eloise going to say to Pen when she chased after her at the full moon ball? Would it have led to a reconciliation if Colin hadn't interrupted? What do you think?
Oh, that's interesting.
I always wondered this before season 3, because it always reminds me of that moment at the end of 106 where Penelope turns up in the Bridgerton garden and they've been estranged from each other, her and Eloise. And Pen breaks down and cries, and Eloise just rushes to comfort her regardless of kind of what's gone on around them. And I think it would have been one of those moments where she maybe wouldn't have known exactly how to approach Pen because there was this void between them, but she just needed to follow her because it pained her to see her friend in so much pain. It's one of those moments of hurt which kind of transcends everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But I don't know that Pen would have been receptive to anything in that moment.
That's what I was thinking. I wonder if this would have made the situation even worse because from their interactions in 301, Penelope is so hurt by Eloise's friendship with Cressida. If Eloise kind of alludes to the fact that it's her fault and she told Cressida what was going on and that she's inadvertently to blame for the scandal, I think Penelope would be in such an emotional headspace that that would just drive a further wedge between them.
Yeah.
You know?
She wasn't the right space, and I don't think Pen has the knowledge of where Eloise is at with her to allow herself to be really vulnerable in that moment.
And as this nightmarish ball comes to a close, we're going to take a beat to talk about the lighting and cinematography. This ball is unusual in that it is much darker than we normally see on Bridgerton, but Jess Brownell conveyed to the director of photography for this episode, Alicia Robbins, that they wanted the story to feel a bit darker this season, and Alicia decided to convey that through the lighting as well, especially at the full moon ball. I think this is actually a really good place to convey how dark this season is, because the set piece ends on a surprisingly dark note. Just as Penelope thinks she's caught the attention of a gentleman, fan favorite Lord Remington, she's then forced to flee the ball in disgrace. They also utilize canted angles at the end of the scene to heighten our unease.
And so much of the season plays with light, shadows, darkness. The first is called Out of the Shadows and it ends with Into the Light.
Yeah.
And this episode in particular plays with that, as the whistle down voiceover will allude to a little bit later on. And this is a really dark moment for Pen, but it's also hugely exposing, as we'll see with the use of the light and the moon in a moment. But I just want to say, before we also flee this absolute shitstorm of a show, we also have to take the time to praise our favourite matchmaker Colin for his efforts this episode, because you know what? They might have been doomed from the very start, but I do think it's still sweet that he deliberately takes care to introduce Penelope to men of high rank and men with a kind disposition. I mean, save Lord Wilding. Sorry, Joe Barnes. But he genuinely tries to introduce her to the best prospects that he can. Lord Wilding, then Lord Basilio. And we could perhaps also assume that Colin even pushed Pen towards Lord Remington before she struck up this conversation with him. He certainly tries to be supportive as they're talking afterwards. And he's sort of course he wants to spend time with you. And when Colin nudges her towards Basilio as well, she, as we say, protests that he's a Viscount, so much higher in rank above her. And Colin basically argues, a la Mark Darcy, that she's likeable just as she is, and she is enough as she is, saying, "You're Penelope Featherington, do not forget that." And I think it is proof that he's always viewed her highly and holds her in high esteem. Well, the Featheringtons, as he says all the way back in 207. He thinks she's such a catch that she could nab a lord when her two sisters even had to marry below their station. And it shows that he's truly trying his best here. He's not trying to sabotage her prospects, and he's elevating her above his own little third-born status.
This does a lot of heavy lifting in making up for what Colin said in 208. I mean, I forgave him pretty much the moment he said those words. But here we receive the first glimmer, not just of his insecurities, as later this season we receive signs that Colin feels like he can't really offer Pen anything of value, but that he honestly thinks Pen could easily marry a man who outranks him. Another reason why he probably feels so concerned and inferior regarding the Debling situation, and why he struggles to come up with reasons why Pen shouldn't marry Debling in 304.
Don't knock him. He had some incredible reasons. He's like, he's blonde, he's a Libra, and I've never seen you with a Libra.
I love that interview that Luke and Nicola do where they're making fun of Colin's like really shitty reasons for why she shouldn't marry Debling.
Listen, we will get there, Colin, don't you worry. But not for the last time this season, Colin makes to follow a carriage-bound Pen.
Target locked.
And you know what? Apparently he wasn't in the mood for a full-on sprint like he is in episode 4.
Yeah.
So he just leaves it, I guess, as we find our sad little Pen crying in the back of her carriage in her beautiful starry dress with the light of the full moon mockingly representing how she's been fully exposed for everyone to see.
As Portia mentioned earlier, the full moon is a harbinger of fertility. So I feel like this shot of the moon also visually sets up some of the sex scenes we see after this point with Penelope's sisters. We also get some payoff for that throwaway line that Prudence mentioned earlier this episode about how sex flattened her hair, because Philippa apparently tucked away this little nugget of advice as we see her engaging in sex in a position that will not flatten her hair. I also think this shot of the moon could be a visual cue that Penelope will not be left unaffected by the full moon herself. And if you look closely, the little case that Pen uses to write issues of Lady Whistledown with on the go is also nestled next to her on the carriage seat. From behind-the-scenes footage, we know that Penelope wrote an issue of Lady Whistledown on her way home. This bit of dialogue was cut from the script, but interestingly contained the titular reference to how bright the moon, as Lady Whistledown offered several comments about the light of the moon. By the light of the moon, it is easy for one to mistake the night as a place of safety. But no matter how bright the moon shines, we are wise to remember that the night is a wild place. Indeed, in the night, we might discover revelations too glaring to face in the light of day. For Penelope, she thinks she has no hope of finding a match after the full moon ball, and after their upcoming kiss, Colin's left reeling from the realization that he sees Pen in a romantic light.
Speaking of lights, the Queen finally finds her sparklers. Yay! In Francesca Bridgerton, and specifically praises her for being the type of person who performs not for the crown, but for herself. A quality she'll eventually realise she appreciates in Lady Whistledown at the end of the season. And before we get a glimpse of the aforementioned Featherington sister sex scenes, that is phrased terribly. Separate Featherington sister sex scenes with separate husbands. Oh, this just took a turn. So sorry, just wait a second for the Finch Prudank insertion of it all. We're going to pop over to the Mondriches as they also decide to get intimate. Bloody everyone's going for it, realising that the whole idea of sleeping in separate beds was a bit silly.
Everyone's horny in part 1.
Absolutely. Well, you know, true love can't be stopped. Turns out you can just walk across the corridor.
It can be stopped. Actually, fortunately for show, Will and Alice, they aren't interrupted because in the original script, their kids burst in and ask to sleep in bed with them. Because Will and Alice are loving parents, they of course agree, so they're no longer sleeping in separate beds, but the entire family is now sharing one bed. Mrs. Kana is going to have a heart attack, I'm sure. Back at the Featherington house, we see a shot of a sad Pen writing at her desk, a shot that will be repeated in episode 305. This scene is a reshoot. It replaces the shot we just mentioned where Penelope wrote the Whistledown issue on the carriage ride home. This was actually the final shot filmed for the whole of season 3. We'll return to it at episode 5, though, when it gets reused, because we're about to find ourselves falling into another time vortex as Lady Whistledown begins to speak in voiceover. One unlucky lady buys an old issue of Lady Whistledown from season 2 by mistake. It's the one about Antony's engagement, by the way.
Do you reckon there's just a poor street urchin out there who's got a load of back copies and he's just trying to shift them all like, new Whistledown, absolutely new Whistledown, read all about it.
Antony married again. We then find Moonlight Pen glancing at her window at an unusual sight. Daphne riding past the Featherington house in her carriage on the way to her presentation back in 1812. You even get a little glimpse of Colin on horseback riding past Pen's house with Benedict. It's simultaneously season 1, season 2.
Reduce. Reuse. Recycle.
It's simultaneously season 1, season 2, and episodes 2 and 5 of season 3. And to think we once thought the season 2 epilogue was perplexing. Let's try to stick to 18 feet. Let's try to stick to 1815, shall we?
And if you don't know what any of that was,
we'll include a collage or something.
We'll include a collage, but the show sometimes reuses establishing shots.
Right, yeah.
And it just so happened that we're establishing that Daphne really likes to be presented to the Queen.
Yes, yeah.
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm so sorry. We're crying with laughter, and Pen's having an absolute shit day, isn't she? Sorry, Pen.
I just like the idea that she's like mooning about Colin, and then he's like literally riding past her house years earlier.
He's galloping along.
What a way to gallop along.
Now, Window Pen.
Oh,
I have to give her a shout out because what a bloody icon this woman is. If you've been on this journey for a long time, you know why she's such an icon, because all the way back at Tudum 2023, this picture of Pen was pretty much the first thing we ever saw officially of season 3. This was her real glow up. Well, again, this was her first official look at her glow up, and it was just really moving to see her. We quickly christened her Window Pen. 1,000 theories about why she looked the way she did, but it was so special and surreal to actually see her in the show.
Yeah.
And speaking of promo icons, there is Unicolin looking towards Featherington House.
Unicolin!
Also glancing out at his younger self riding past on horseback.
As he's got the latest issue of Whistledown clutched in his hand. I think his hand's better now, isn't it? He's not still bandaged. Days have passed. Once again, we've fallen down a fucking time vortex, so who knows? Who knows? I mean, the first time we saw this shot, it was slightly different, so it was kind of taken from a different angle, possibly with a different cut, and it looked like he was looking at someone, and we spent ages being like, is it Anthony? Is it Eloise? Yeah. It was Noam.
Yeah. We were trying to follow his eye line. It was irrelevant.
It was irrelevant, but this isn't going to help Pen in the long run, because Colin is pissed at Whistledown yet again. He's troubled and heartbroken, but how else is he looking?
Well, Unicolin, another icon of the Christmas Eve leaks.
Christmas Day, please.
Or not leaks.
They were leaked a little bit.
Well, Christmas Day leaks that ultimately were then official.
Been a long journey, guys.
Yeah.
So, anyway, introducing Unicolin. And he is very out of sorts, as evidenced by his wardrobe. He's haphazardly dressed in his unbuttoned Unicolin waistcoat. Now, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous waistcoat which features lots of different animals, mythical and otherwise. There was a point in time where we were looking at every animal on this waistcoat. There have been fan theories aplenty that have sprung up from this waistcoat, but I just loved the fabric. I would 100% buy a dress in this material. I don't know about you guys.
I think you can buy it as well. Someone tracked it down. You can buy it by I mean, we can't afford it. It's by like Ralph Lauren or someone, but you can if you want.
Oh.
If we find the link, we will include it in our show notes.
If you want to fund Veg's Unicolin dress. Univeg.
So some of the animals featured, there's a monkey, a unicorn, of course, the namesake, and some butterflies for his pen. Oh, And this scene, I think we thought that this waistcoat would be a significant player in the series, but this scene is pretty short and sweet costume-wise. But Colin is wearing this waistcoat again, spoilers, during the first kiss later this episode. And he also wears it in the final episode where he and Pen are settled into their marital bliss. His shirt is scandalously hanging open with no cravat in sight. And although Colin is in low spirits, his emotional support girl, as always, is on hand to help him with his hardship.
Is on hand, is on head, because as Whistledown writes of Penelope's mortifying exposure, we get an insight into how hopeless our little Pen now feels.
And while we knew Miss Featherington's marital prospects were slim at best, this recent scandal will make any further hopes disappear.
What a shit old time.
We take a quick but revelatory promenade with Cressida and Elle, where we learn it was Eloise to blame, not Cressida, for spreading the rumor. Cressida really bites back at Elle with a sobering reminder that Eloise should look inward towards her own recklessness rather than assuming the worst of those around her.
But sorry, Al, we'd love to sit with you and talk things over, but Pen sorely needs us. So we're going to go find her in a room, still heartbreakingly resting by her window. As we were talking about the use of light and darkness in this episode and the season, but I think in this scene in particular, it's really beautiful. There's light outside, there are shadows in her room, night is beginning to fall, and also she's possibly peering out towards a little residence across the street, perhaps. Beautiful Pen just looks like a pre-Raphaelite painting here, one of our favourites. It's just gorgeous. Veg, tell me everything you know.
Well, speaking of paintings, according to Nicola's makeup artist Jessie, they wanted Pen's eye makeup to represent watercolours, which is a feeling that they got when they saw the dress that Moonlight Pen is wearing. Gorgeous. I love the makeup look here, and her waves in her hair have also been brushed out, and her hair is down, which makes her look a bit more vulnerable, which is definitely an important state of mind for the upcoming scene. She also has lip gloss, which is meant to make her look more kissable. Super convenient.
If anyone just happens to be passing by.
Yeah. And so relatable as well. I mean, I know she wasn't wearing lip gloss necessarily to look kissable, but, you know.
She's down and out, you know
That's
what I mean?
classic.
What's she got to lose?
Yeah, who among us hasn't put some chapstick on right before we think we
And stared sadly out the window, waiting for your prince to come rescue you from your social scandal and ruin.
The dress. We have to talk about the dress. This is the stuff of legends. And to give everyone the lore behind this dress is what we now know as the first kiss dress. And Nicola hinted in an interview that this dress had a particular name, which was a spoiler in and of itself. We did see this look in one of the first Tudum releases. So honestly, we have talked it to death. So do go and catch that episode. What's it called?
I think that's like our second episode that we ever did.
Yeah.
What a to-doom, what a double to-doom.
Maybe don't go back and listen. We were recording on tin cans, we didn't know what we were doing. Don't go back and listen.
It's there if you want it, babes. Yeah, we were a bit rough and ready then. But anyway, I will always love the kiss curls in this scene. Kiss curls, how appropriate are they here? She looks absolutely divine. Her dress is lovely and shimmery as well. A gorgeous colour, beautiful and shimmering in the moonlight. It's gorge. And it would be remiss of me not to mention the necklace.
Don't do it.
Like hiding behind my hands.
So we have two big proponents of the necklace truther camp on this episode right now. Obson Lecky, are you...
Look. My lawyer has told me not to make personal statements at this time.
Yeah, so basically the background is that when we were examining the picture, the still of this scene, or of the upcoming scene, should I say, there was a necklace and we were zooming and we just thought that this was a charm necklace that Colin had got Pen from his travels with a charm for each country he visited.
You can't say that wouldn't have been great.
It would be romantic.
Yeah, that would have been great, but...
It didn't happen.
No, it was just a necklace.
But it would have been great.
It's nice though. And it may not have come to anything.
You know what? Those were some long, dark months out there. We had to get by however we had to get by.
Yeah, it did help pass the time. And as you say, it would have been nice.
Yeah. Veg was a skeptic, and then we almost got her on board, and then it amounted to nothing.
Well, then it kept appearing in every bit of promo. Necklace truthers will stay with you in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her book that she was reading in the end of episode 1 scene, that book, people thought for a bit that could be like a little necklace box.
There was the still of Colin giving gifts to his family. There was like a box that everyone was like, is that the necklace?
Yeah. No, it's a watch for his mom.
And we may have lost in the end, but it kept us going for a little while there. So no shame, Lecky, no shame. But what else is going on? Sans necklace.
Penelope is joined in her room by Portia, and Polly Walker's acting in this scene is just so good. At first, she sort of goes on her usual, we're in another scandal, for fuck's sake, why do I never get a break tirade? But Pen feels so hopeless and despondent at this point that she barely even flinches, and it's just gut-wrenching to hear Portia's exasperation that Pen really thought she'd be able to find a husband.
And it's so sad because Penelope just kind of takes it. She doesn't have the strength anymore to fight back. And I honestly think we never see Pen this low. Even in her most bleakest moments, she's always been a character of action, picking up the pen at the end of 208, making hard choices with Eloise and Marina. Even in the really bleak moments in 307 and 308, she still gets up, goes out into the world. There's that moment in 308 where she opens the doors, gets on with life. But seeing her here where she's genuinely lost the ability to fight is just an entirely different Penelope altogether. And I think this actually flips something in Portia because she's used to seeing Penelope bite back with her a little bit and making those little disobedient remarks back at her mother that, you know, Portia always tells her off for doing it, but it's one of those things where the absence of Pen doing that is really actually quite worrying.
And I love how Polly almost tries to reach out to Nicola here in the scene, but she pulls back at the last minute. Portia tries to console Pen and say that men really aren't worth the hassle.
Preach.
After all, as we will see throughout the season, this is the life Portia has known, and she's using the knowledge and experience she has as best she can, even when it's misguided.
And as Portia then sweeps out of the room, Pen is left sitting in anguish, resuming her vigil of sadly staring into the abyss / trying to squint into Colin Bridgerton's bedroom. Because yes, Portia, part of really did fucking hope she was actually going to get married. Actually, now you mention it. And equally living with that hope that she'd had is also that deep sadness that it wasn't going to be Colin. And now it's absolutely fucking not going to be Colin, is it? It's not going to be anyone. So poor Pen. And we stay with her in the room as night falls across Mayfair. And if the light of day was a bit too bright for you, Pen, let's see if the night and its familiar shadows can bring its own familiar figure to you. Because suddenly there's a knock at the door.
Presumably weighed down by a bag of coins, Ray informs Penelope that she has a visitor and escorts her outside only to promptly get lost, as per Colin's instructions, I'm assuming. And we finally feast our eyes on our leading man. Sorry, plant. Yep, perched behind Colin is the Pointy Topiary that spawned hours of nonsensical discussion. I will also say that I just purchased a comic depicting the first kissing from Paul and Fan comic. Highly recommend their art, by the way. And it wasn't until afterward that Obbs pointed out that the Pointy Topiary is in the background of the art I bought. So this enigma will now hang on my walls, which I am very excited by.
A bit of what a Barb history there captured for all eternity.
Yeah, I remember that. It must have been a time when I was kind of busy in my personal life.
Because you're like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah, and I remember you guys released an episode and I was like, what is this?
Right.
I mean, it went down really well. People loved it. It was a super popular episode, but I remember I didn't even know you guys were doing this.
I think this was at the time where we were getting new bits of information and we hadn't realised how much we're going to have to pace ourselves.
Yeah, I think so. It was a great episode, guys.
How is the topiary looking, Veg?
So this Pointy Topiary appears to have taken shape so naturally that one could take it for planted. And indeed, as we mentioned, we spent many hours trying to determine whether this was a faux or a real topiary. We pored over drone footage and Google images until one of our listeners pointed out a similar Pointy Topiary behind Anthony during his love declaration in 208.
But that wasn't the only point of interest, was it, Veg?
No. So we were also intrigued by the doorway that Penelope appears to be standing in, which we eventually tracked down at Basildon Park. And for those who haven't listened to us before, this scene was filmed not only in the same place as the Wildest Fantasies scene from 208, but actually only several feet away, which I discovered by traipsing around for hours, making the gardening volunteers at Basildon Park think I was the biggest weirdo in the world. Because I was trying to find this Pointy Topiary, but in the end, it turns out that it probably was brought in, the topiary, because the gardeners I spoke to said that they brought in a lot of stuff with them. So I was traipsing around and then I sent Obs and Lecky a picture of a doorway.
We were trying to match the crack in the wall that she looked to be standing, because it was like a distinctive shape or shading on the brick. And we were like, is the wall even real? Is anything real? Is the doorway fake? And so you spent hours at Basildon
Looking at windows, doors. Yeah.
Yeah.
and you were like, it's not here, guys. And I was like, get around that corner right now. You are not giving up.
Yeah. It's like, it's not here. All there is this doorway with a matching crack.
You were like, it's really weird. The only thing I can find is this perfect doorway that exactly matches. And actually, now I look at it, it has the exact same shape that we're looking for, but I don't think it's it. And I was like, because you had really bad Wi-Fi, I was like, if you leave there without stepping towards it, we're going to fight.
I'm very glad that you two were there with me.
And it was. Well done. You found the exact spot.
Yeah, that little back garden of Basildon Park is a really big scene of the action because, we had a lot of the end of 208 action and his wildest fantasies have brought him back here for a real life fantasy with Pen.
Everything comes back to it.
And, spoiler alert, but we will see an even fancier fantasy in the next episode.
And of course, this is the location where the apology scene took place in 301. It was actually filmed on the same day, with Nicola saying it was quite a big moment. We'd already shot another scene, the ending scene of us together in episode 1 that day. So there was a lot going on. Luke also added that it was one of the first scenes we shot in July 2022. It was a night shoot, but it was the hottest day of the year that's ever been recorded in the UK. So a pretty busy day for Pollen. And I think we mentioned this last episode, but we have a behind the scenes shot of them blocking out the first kiss in their 301 apology costumes. So very cute. Go check it out.
Veg, I totally agree with what you say about this space, like so much action taking place in this same location, and it's like they're both drawn back to this moment again and again and again. So you have the break that happens in 208 where Colin ruins things between the two of them with his careless words, and then they come back to that exact spot in 301 for their reconciliation of their plan, and then you have their first kiss here taking place, which changes everything for them. And as we'll see, this place makes a pretty big impression in Colin's psyche as he comes to associate this private space as being the one place he feels he can find her again and again. I mean, it is literally her house, so it's like, this is the one place I might find you. And it's like, to be fair, she does live there. It's a pretty good guess that's where she's going to be, but
it's their purgatory, I think of it as.
But it's still so sweepingly romantic that he thinks this is their space, and it's going to end up becoming their house. So it's even more of this beautiful full circle moment for them. And I also think it's interesting that the first kiss takes place in this location because it really adds to the hopelessness Pen feels being caught in that same space and that same garden as well, where they're just good friends, but instead it becomes this transformative space of connection for them. I mean, for Colin at least, she still thinks things are pretty hopeless.
That's a good point because she was rejected by Colin there in 208, and here she takes a risk and asks him not to reject her, and he doesn't this time, but she thinks it's hopeless.
Veg, how is he looking?
Well, you have to ask my cat who's climbing all over me.
Punks, how is he looking?
So this is Uni Colin, back with a vengeance, and he's looking great, and I'm super happy that all of these animals got to witness this beautiful moment. I don't know who enjoyed it most. And it's beautifully ironic for Colin to be covered in beasts, as he describes Westfield actions as beastly. And Uni Colin has on a rugged coat that we spent hours and hours discussing, and we tried to figure out the context of this exact moment. It was a good discussion point, to be fair.
Our only discussion point, really.
And his hair is also slightly dishevelled, which we thought might be like post-kiss. But no, this is pre. He spent the whole day running his hands through his hair in abject despair. Love that for us.
And one of our listeners, Erin, said, in the first kiss scene, why do you think they included the line from Pen, it is her job to report what everyone is talking about? It would have been suspicious if she had not. Because if they were not going to have Colin put together that Pen is Lady Whistledown, what was the purpose? She says almost the same thing to Eloise in episode 3, so they have it here too. It's such a good setup line to pay off later, but they didn't. It drives me crazy. Well, I think from the past few seasons, we know that Penelope can be careless as Lady Whistledown, and in this moment of distress and vulnerability, she slips up and makes a comment that if Colin actually focused on what she was saying instead of what he wanted to do to her, it could lead to her identity being discovered. And I think you kind of can see Colin slightly react to it a little bit, enough that you could call back to it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really process it. He doesn't call her out. He doesn't push her on it.
I was hoping that this was a sign that Penelope would again slip up later this season, as she does in the book, with either Colin or Cressida discovering her identity as a result. Sadly, that doesn't happen, though it may have originally. Apparently, Jess Madsen has said that Cressida figured out that Pen was Lady Whistledown after overhearing Pen and Elle speaking after the wedding reception. So it's possible this line in the first kiss scene was setting up that scene later on, with Penelope maybe slipping up with her words in some other way.
I do agree, though. I think if I could change a few points about the season, this would be one, because I feel like it was kind of set up. We talked about it at the time in season 2 that Colin was at least going to suspect Eloise, as he does in the book, because he's perceptive and because he was paying attention. And if you do watch carefully, there are moments that could lead you down that incorrect path of thinking it's Eloise.
Yeah.
And a moment like this as well, where Pen makes such an obvious comment for us as the viewers to sort of be like, oh, that's going to come back into play. I understand why Colin had to find out from Pen in that shocking way, but I still would have liked for him to have suspected Eloise or something like that, so that, like Cressida, so that you saw that these are intelligent characters who were paying attention, and that Penelope ultimately is discovered by those closest to her and by someone like Cressida because she made a mistake and slipped up, instead of what happens with Cressida, where she sort of asks one guy and he tells her everything.
And he's like, oh yeah, that redhead? Yeah.
I know her. I don't know. I liked that in the book, and I think it'd been really interesting to see that play out in the season.
Yeah.
Heartbreakingly, Pen goes on to say that she brought this entire situation on herself because she was a sad, stupid girl who believed she might possibly have a chance of love. Oh, Pen. We rarely see Pen this low. If anything, she's always been this creature of hope.
Yeah.
Even in the times of adversity, and she's always so believed in the possibility of love for herself. As Colin tells her not to say such things, Whistledown reaches out in the voiceover as the music begins to build and the night falls around them, safe away from everyone else.
Perhaps a return to the shadows is for the best. After all, a small taste of the light can lead to that most dangerous of emotions, hope. And once hope is lost, a lady may become reckless.
In that moment, Pen's eyes lift up to Colin's. Helpfully, she's perched on a step, so they're much closer in eye level. But we can see that thought pass through her mind that this might be that one chance at her tasting the life that she dreamed of. And she says, Colin, could I ask you something? He says, of course. And she says, would you kiss me?
Of course, this is taken almost directly from the books, and for a long time, fans had debated whether or not we wanted Pen to ask for the kiss and in what context it would happen. We spoke on this at length during our book reread, but Nicola Coughlan said of this moment, it was really difficult to play that because a lot of people don't understand why she would do that, but you have to understand in that moment she thinks she's lost everything. She thinks she's embarrassed herself in front of society, no one's going to marry her, she's stuck with her mom and sisters forever, and the man she loves doesn't love her.
So ultimately, we talked about it a lot. Do you like how it played out as an adaptation of the book?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Absolutely.
One of the most beautiful kisses in cinema.
Yeah, and you can hear from my reaction. Oh my god, that's the best first kiss I've ever seen. And like, oh.
There was an enthusiastic reaction in the What Barb household when this scene happened, and it's such an interesting adaptation of the book because the lines are almost like dead on pretty much, and for Colin, I think you can read book Colin's narrative and translate that pretty beautifully to this scene.
Yeah.
But for Pen, it's just such a different tone. We were so struck by it and so moved by it because it's coloured with this different heartbreaking, split wide open tone to it. I think book Pen's really defiant and she feels empowered by asking for the kiss. Yeah. Whereas here,
it's a lack of hope.
It's a hopelessness that motivates her, which is such a sad way to go into something like this. And as we've said before, Bandaging Mister Bridgerton is such an internalised book, especially when you're in Colin's perspective. He processes a lot in his mind, even in the show. And the first kiss scene is his perspective in the book, and he completely loses his mind. And through his narrative, we see how much he wants her and how he's captivated by what he describes as the sheer epiphany of the moment. And I think Luke does such a great job of capturing that and displaying that internalized, I wouldn't call it a struggle, because I think it's that moment of discovery for him.
Yeah.
She asks him, but he's there just as much and wants to kiss her just as much.
And it was just like, I'd gone from, I wasn't a hater, but
You're a skeptic of the first kiss ask, yeah.
Like it happens in the books. Yeah. But then like as soon as I realised that that was the way that things were going, I was like, absolutely. Give it to me now.
It works really well. And the episode is such a massive journey for Pen as well, because she has to be in a very specific mindset. And it's almost a mindset that you would never expect Pen to be in. It's why so many people have grappled with it. But the show does a really good way in this episode of putting her in that mindset in a really believable way, to the point where you truly believe
that she would do it.
It's over for her. And this is her last chance at sort of touching the stars.
Putting aside the fact that this is probably one of the best kisses in the history of cinema, as I said, this scene, as we all know, is so masterfully acted by Nicola and Luke. I just can't get over the range of emotions they managed to cover in this scene, which is just so bittersweet and romantic. And I just love how they included some of the humor from the book, with Colin trying to poke holes in her argument in his playful but simultaneously sheepish manner, because he's in that moment with her and he feels for her. It's just so good.
Yeah, and he can't deny like the technicality, like technically it'd actually be already dead. He's like, Colin, there's a time.
Yeah.
And I love the way that she breaks through. It's not because he doesn't want to kiss her, it's because he recognizes how much turmoil she's in and he's trying to be there for her in the best way that he can. But she breaks through to him just by asking and by saying his name, and he just can't deny her.
Yeah.
And I have to praise the way this scene is scored, because I think the music follows them both so beautifully. It sort of moves between their perspectives. So you have moments where it's despairing and helpless, delicate, moments where it pulls back and it's really quiet. And then as they kiss, it's tentative. There's this pause as it breathes between the two of them, this moment. And then this soaringly hopeful score kicks in as they kiss. And it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
You're going to make me sob again.
Someone did ask if we cried, and I don't cry at anything. I don't think I cried at any part of season 3, but you lot cry all the time.
Yeah, I think I teared up. And like even rewatching the scene for this episode of the podcast, I was like, how the fuck am I supposed to take notes? You're just so in that moment with them, and it's just so beautiful. Like it's hard to think about anything else than the scene that's playing out in front of you. It's just amazing.
Yeah. And in my defense, I don't cry that much anymore since I've got on the sertraline. And I think someone asked me, like...
Not sponsored.
Yeah, that was the only moment. I think someone asked, did Veg cry at anything else? I like cried a bit at the wedding. But no, this was the heavy hitter. This is the moment, literally, from the entire season for me.
This was everything we've been imagining. Their first kiss. Yeah. And there we were.
Yeah.
And one of our listeners, Murphin's Mama, said, what do you believe Colin is thinking when Pen asked for the kiss? And do you think if Pen had stuck around a bit longer, would Colin have asked to court her?
I think exactly in the book.
I have some thoughts about this, because if you are paying close attention, Luke, as Colin, glances at Penelope's lips a few times before their first kiss. I found it interesting that this is actually hinted at in the script for this episode. After Colin says, you must not say such things, the scene description says, Colin sees how truly devastated Pen is right now. It breaks his heart, but it's also incredibly intimate seeing her this way, revealing such emotion. There's a long moment, Colin watching her, not knowing what to say, before Pen looks back up at him, studying him in the moonlight. His strong, handsome features, his eyes, it's almost more than she can bear. Yet she feels something building inside her, the world is ending, so what the hell impulse. After she asks him for a favor, Colin says, of course, and as Pen pauses, finding her words, it says, as her lips part, Colin's eyes flick down a fraction of a second to take them in, a strange thought crossing his mind, but he shakes it off. And if you're paying close attention, Luke, as Colin, glances at Penelope's lips a few times throughout this scene, and that perfectly ties in with book Colin and how he also wanted to kiss Penelope before she vocalizes the question. There is also cut dialogue after she asks. The scene description says, Colin is gobsmacked, Pen's face immediately turns crimson, but she forces herself to stick with the feeling. As Colin says, Penelope, that would ruin you. And Penelope replies, I'm already ruined. And Colin says, you are not like this. As for Colin's state of mind after Penelope says please, the scene description says, and suddenly nothing else exists. He watches those lips as they whisper his name. He then approaches her as if a man possessed. Colin looks at her like he's never really seen her before, in awe of her beauty. I also love the eye contact between the two during the kiss and the way Colin kind of checks in with Penelope whenever they break apart to see how she feels in that moment. And after they break apart the second time, it also looks like Colin is trying to catch Penelope's gaze so that he can figure out what she's thinking and maybe even go in for a third kiss. So I do think he was going to go in for a third kiss, though that time, of course, she refuses to meet his eye because she's broken out of that moment.
And Veg, like you say, I think you can read a lot of the book back and get his perspective, although it's tainted with this heavy sadness. We have to give it over to Luke Newton because he described exactly what this moment was for Colin, where he said just a small kiss and it could have stopped there, but then the moment continues between the two of them. And there's a lot going on in Colin's mind as he tries to process, why is it passionate? Why do I feel like this way? Oh my God, there's something here. This is a moment of realization we've always talked about. I think we've always said that it's never been about Colin falling in love with Penelope. It's about the moment Colin realizes that he's fallen in love with Penelope.
The light switch comes on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it took something major for him to have that. Luke continued that it was the moment of realization that, I mean, he's such a romantic character, but he's been running away from society trying to find something. And then he finds it in this moment with his best friend. But then it's like, oh my God, you're my best friend.
Yeah.
And he talked about how fun it was to play those range of emotions. And I think for Colin, because obviously it's a huge moment for Pen, but she dashes out and she tries to bury it and lock it away, as we see in episode 3. But this is huge for Colin, especially when you look at what he's gone through with his conundrum about intimacy that he wrote about in his journals. Why does he feel this massive void between physical and emotional intimacy? He's traveled all over trying to sort of reconcile these two notions that just can't connect. And it's in this moment that they connect. So it's not even just about Penelope, it's about him understanding what intimacy is and what love is in that context.
Nicola has said that for Penelope, she thinks that she will have this one kiss and it will, quote, sustain her forever, whereas Colin finally sees her in that moment. I think that is so beautifully put. There's also some beautiful phrasing in the script after Pen runs off where the writer alludes to the idea that Penelope thinks that this moment was just a mere passing fantasy. The scene description says, but in that moment, the spell is broken for Pen as she realizes she is pressing her face against the window of a house she can never live in, which is such a heartbreaking thought. And then we get some more insight into what Colin was thinking in this scene. We stay on Colin as a strange new feeling takes hold, a feeling that tells him that he didn't want that kiss to end or Pen to seemingly leave so easily, and certainly not to thank him. And easily is underlined, and I think that's because the impact of this moment, this kiss, follows him into episode 303. This moment possesses him, whereas she seems kind of unaffected by it in 303, and we do see a glimmer of what Colin is thinking in the scene description as it continues, saying, because he's never felt this way after a kiss. And then the script says that Colin is left, quote, wondering what it all means. It feels very Colin that he's had this earth-shattering revelation and then he's just left wondering what it all might mean. And then there's also some cut Lady Whistledown voiceover following the kiss where it says, but once the sun has shone, there is no turning back. And of course, there is no turning back for Colin.
And of course, just like in the book, she says thank you and she looks down and she can't meet his eyes because is she scared of what she's going to find there? Is she scared that it's going to be pity? That's like Nicola talked about, where she leaves the scene almost even worse. She's tasted this world that she'd always dreamed of and closed the door, or she thinks that this is a closed door on something for her, and she flees the scene. And a couple of our listeners, Gabby and Debbie, both were interested about Pen's point of view after the kiss. What is she thinking? And if she hadn't run away, what would have happened? I think she needed to bury it away, because she's been so damaged by hope in this episode that she couldn't go there anymore. And I think she probably went to her room and buried herself under the covers as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Though I do think if she was trapped in that moment with Colin, they may have had somewhat of a breakthrough, because I feel like Colin wouldn't just sit there and say nothing, because I feel like Penelope would probably try to dismiss the situation further. And that eventually would start to wear on Colin, where he realizes, like, I don't agree with what she's saying. And then there would be some sort of breakthrough if they had stayed in that moment, in my opinion.
I wonder if Colin needed more time to think on it because he was so bewildered.
Yeah.
That in that moment, he wouldn't have, do you know, because like in the carriage scene, he sits and he's like, I've been thinking about this for weeks and I know exactly what I have to say to you.
Yeah, but he's also, when he's with Pen, sometimes like she pushes him into these realizations, kind of like in the purpose scene where he starts to see her in a new light because of what she's saying. I feel like if she said something to the effect here, like, oh, I know it didn't mean anything again after the kiss, he would realize, but it meant everything. And so he may have inched towards that realization a little quicker.
But of course, that's not how it goes. Pen dashes out of the scene and out of the frame. She's like a dream slipping away before he even has the chance to process what's happened. I really love that Trisha Brock, the director, let her go. I've said it before that it's like Lizzie leaving the frame at the end of Pride and Prejudice. We stick with Colin, because this is his huge moment, and it's beautifully had such a similar impact as it does on his book counterpart, where it changes everything for him.
Yeah.
He needed that huge moment after years of not being able to directly confront or see his own feelings. So this is transformative for him. It's an ending for Penelope, but it's the beginning of everything for Colin. So we're left with him in the garden. And I think that's so fitting that we're left with him. And the emotional support curl is barely hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
To quote Book Colin, his life, as he knew it, is over. And dear listeners, it is glorious. Oh my God, what a big, big, big episode.
Agreed.
I actually think this is the biggest Pollen episode of the whole series.
Well, I mean, like, the first kiss is so foundational, for their relationship and everything to come. And we talked about before the season came out, this is where the plan falls apart. So we not only have the plan enacted and the plan falls apart in one whole episode, and everything from this point on is Colin dealing with the realization he's been in love with Penelope all along, and like, how the fuck is he going to fix the situation in the season? It's a big moment for both of them.
We're further along than we ever dreamed we would be, right? We didn't think we'd be getting a kiss in episode 2. We thought it was just way too early.
I know. So much happens in this episode.
Yeah.
Lecky, how do you even choose a whistle up? Well, the whistle down, I think speaks for itself. We'll come to that in a second, but your whistle up?
The whistle up is a toss-up between Pen leaving Colin breathless by praising his kind eyes.
I can't believe that was in this episode. We've recorded this on separate days, to be honest. And I can't even believe that was this episode.
Yes. It's a toss-up with the most beautiful first kiss I've ever seen on television.
Yeah.
Our whistle down, of course, to no one's surprise, it has to be the brothel scene.
Could have lived without it. And bearing in mind everything that happened in this episode, what's our bow rating for this one?
Okay, so just a reminder that it's out of 12 bows, and the fewer bows, the better. So I'm going to give this one probably a 1.
1.
Yeah.
The first kiss is so beautiful, and the phrasing of her praising his kind eyes moves me to tears every time I think about it. So
yeah, I love that scene. And the giggles at Osterley, those little moments together, the promenade.
Yep.
There's so much happens. I think I'm going to give it a 2.
that feels good. I almost went with the 2 initially.
It's definitely up there, I think. The brothel, obviously, we've talked about that at length. Yeah, I think I would have liked the original market scene, perhaps. I'd been interested to see how that went. But it's such a beautiful episode. We said it earlier in the episode, I think it gets really overlooked, weirdly, because so much happens in here that we spent so much time hoping for, but so much happens in the rest of the season that this gets sort of forgotten, and yet it's kind of everything you could hope for.
Yeah.
Minus the brothel.
Right. Speaking of the brothel, Fitch, your opinions.
Yeah, same with me. If it wasn't for the brothel, I would give it 0 bows.
Oh.
It's just gorgeous. But yeah, sorry, one gets knocked off for the brothel. Or knocked on, as it were.
Well, there you go. 2 stars for 302. What a beast. What a beauty. And guys, next time in our rewatch, we'll be tackling 303, which I'm excited for. I think this one is going to shoot up in my estimations, having lived with it a little bit longer.
Yeah, same.
But we've got balloon scenes to be dealing with, near-death experiences, Pirate Colin making a dashing reappearance, Lord Debling, John is going to show up. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So
Johnny boy.
we will see you in I don't know. We'll see you in another rewatch at some point in time. But until then, where can everyone find us?
You can find us at Whatabarb Pod on Instagram and TikTok.
And for an audio-visual experience, you can find us over on YouTube, What a Barb Podcast. And if you are just looking to entertain your ears for now, we are on Spotify and all your favourite podcast platforms.
And if you'd like to support the pod, you can join us over on Patreon. We'll have a discussion post for our pen pal tier after this. We're going to have outfit games, little discussion posts about all sorts. Join us over there if you'd like to. But until then, Beans, our darling Beans, sing us out.
It's the way you love me. It's a feeling like this. It's centrifugal motion. It's perpetual bliss. It's that pivotal moment. It's impossible. This kiss, this kiss. This kiss, this kiss. You're welcome. Das violin. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. A Polly podcast.